In racing, you're either the hunter or the hunted, but it's not often you get to choose which you get to partake in. Such is the nature of predator races in the majors. But whether you elect to be predator or prey, both require immense speed and consistency to win. We'll see who grabs the first victory of 2023 as we get ready to watch the majors 2 hours of Sebring, and you'll see it all live here on the Global Sim Racing channel. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and joining me in the booth are Ossian Puhaka and Joey Atterbury. Behind the scenes is our director, Daniel Costello, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Before we get to the racing, though, we go right into a special qualifying format for this series, at least for this race specifically. This is the Alpha Shootout. Now, this is going to be sort of a miniature version of what we will see with the Predator race itself. They'll have all three classes, but only the top three of each class, according to their pre-qualifying, will start this little mini race. It's going to be a one-lap shootout, and the two losing classes will be given 10 extra seconds to their handicap. We'll go into more details of what we're talking about with those handicaps once we get a little closer to the race itself. And then it is going to be a standing start for these drivers that they will do this from. They'll be held each a little bit longer than the other, with the fastest class going last, trying to catch up over that one lap to catch the slowest class. I love this format, Ozzy. It's been a while since we've seen the majors have it out there, and this should be fascinating to see how this all plays out, because the drivers have had a bit of a break from it, and it looks like we are waiting for the extinction qualifying. This is for something else in the race, so we don't have the drivers lined up quite yet for the qualifying. But Ozzy, I love that this is such a unique format for this this series, the Predator format, and some of the drivers might be new to it, so they're going to be experiencing it for the first time as well.
Absolutely, Joe. It's a unique format in the whole of sim racing, and it brings something different and new to the whole sport. And I think that's something that the Major Series has done a really, really good job in that they're introducing this intuitive innovation to the whole world. And it's really, really a great story to have that and to see this unfold live. Now, I hope they've done a good job. I trust them to make a good job. They usually do on the handicaps and how those things are gonna play out, because it's gonna be really curious to see in the end how close they got it. How, if we have, for example, someone from the IMSA 23 class with the GD3 cars in the lead, and somebody in a hybrid chasing them down on the last couple of laps, and just watching the lap times as they go down and they plummet and they go down, and you just have those last lap mad dashes, kind of like in those viral YouTube videos you've seen on Silverstone or Melbourne, when they run three different types of cars and it's a Formula 1 car coming last, and they finish at approximately the same time, and it's all down to the magic of handicaps. And it's just fascinating to see that sort of thing play out in what is a multi-class race. But one more thing I would like to add to this disaster of introducing myself to this broadcast is that I wonder if some drivers in a certain class are gonna sort of work together in order to catch up to that coveted overall victory. Because if you have some two guys, for example, on top of the IMSA 23 class, like Andrew Waring on the pole position in that class, and Dallas Pataska, last year's Mario Andretti trophy winner, if those guys are going to be fighting all race long, they're going to be a little bit slower than the guys like Ross Banfield on top of the hybrid class, or Adam State on top of the LMP2 class. So that's going to be something to look out for as well.
Absolutely. It's really its own thing, and I'm sure our audience will start to pick it up as it goes along. I got to cover quite a few of these back a few years ago, so I'll be used to this, but we'll try and get you abreast on it as it all unfolds. But Joey, let's talk about the track. You've got plenty of experience here at Sebring. I mean, what kind of dangers do they have to look out for besides the chaos that is the Predator format?
Everything. And what Sebring is known for is the bumps. Its tagline is respect the bumps. And the biggest bump that these drivers deal with is through the final turn, turn 17. There's huge series of bumps there that can really throw them off, but that's not the only challenge here on this racetrack. Traditionally a very low grip racetrack, medium to high downforce setups is what we'll see out of the competitors today. And when you put multi-class racing on here, it has a good flow to it. We always see the 12 Hours of Sebring have these classic finishes coming out of Sunset Bend there, but one thing's for sure, when we have all of these different classes lined up, there are some choke points. Being careful about turns 3, 4, and 5. Also headed down into the hairpin turn 7, the biggest and best passing opportunity on this racetrack.
There you see a nice overview of the track on the map. It looks like they are lining up ready for the Alpha qualifying. Your drivers taking part in this are going to be Kevin Hill, Andrew Warren, Dallas Pataska, Edward Shelley, Ozzie Milwain, Adam States, Ross Banfield, Brian Boomsma, and Tyler Maxson. So as we see them now lined up, again, they're going to release these GT3 cars first. They'll hold the LMP2s a little bit longer, and then the LMDHs will go last, trying to catch. And it's whoever finishes first amongst those three classes manages to give their class essentially an extra bit of time, even though it's more if we're adding time to the other classes. So we're waiting for the call from the stewards. Again, this is all unofficial racing here that we're seeing. So none of this will really be able to be seen on the timing and scoring, just on visual. But we'll keep you abreast of what's going on as the drivers get lined up and ready to go. They're getting the last words from race control on what's expected during this. And then they'll have to make a mad dash for a single lap to determine who gets an extra little advantage in the race itself. Looks like they're just giving the information, doubling down with the drivers on how long they're going to be held before they are released, so that they are fully aware and nobody can claim that they were ignorant of what the situation was here at Sebring. Sounds like they should hopefully be wrapping it up. This has got to be nerve-wracking, of course, being just a one-lap dash for the drivers without being able to catch back up if they make any sort of mistakes. And if you do slip off, that's usually game over, but that's why they have 3 drivers in each class lined up for this one, ready to go. And there is the signal. They are ready now. They're giving the countdown. And the green flag is out. GT3s are off and on the inside of the line. It does look like Andrew Warren has the best of the 3. Kevin Hill slots in behind him, his Evolve SimSport teammate, and Dallas Pataska comes off in 3rd. It looks like they are getting ready to count down the LMP2s now, Ozzie.
Yes, they are, and the LMP2s, we got Adam State, Austin Milvain, and Edward Shelley. Those 3 competing for the LMP2 glory. And just briefly, if I may, Adam State is a rookie driver in the major series. Despite that, he qualified on the pole position. He takes the best start there on the inside line, and he's also an independent driver. He does not have a team. And to do that amongst these big teams, you got teams like Team Mad, Forged Energy, Udox Oliver, you got Evolve SimSport, Satellite Racing, and to do that as an independent driver, to take the pole position, do all that effort alone and prepare for this race with such success, no matter what happens here in the Alpha qualifying, it's already a win in my books.
So there you see our GT3 class cars already heading through Collier, and they've let go the LMDHs. They are on their way as well. It is still Warren leading, Hill leading Pataska, with Adam State leading the way for the LMP2s.
Yeah, these guys are definitely off pace here. Dallas Pataska is going to continue on. I know I see race control talking to everybody right now.
I heard something about not having enough fuel in. Did they not fuel the cars up enough? This is a bizarre situation.
I mean, all that time standing stationary on the grid, maybe they put like 1 lap of fuel in and they were standing stationary for 1.5 minutes, burning out a little bit of fuel, and as a result of that, they're running out of fuel. I mean, I'm gonna say at Sebring, we are at Sebring after all. Let's do a Jack Brabham, 1959 Formula One World Championship. Let's have them push the car over the line.
Okay, so it looks like they're giving them a mulligan on this, and since so many drivers had fallen victim to that, it looks like they're lining them up, I think, because everybody's backed off the pace, and maybe Pataska, the only one that put the right amount of fuel in the car and is ready to go. So everybody else is going to have to cycle back around. They're going to line up. We're going to try this one more time. Hopefully they don't go too long on this, because they do have to schedule the grid for the feature race once we get to that. And that has been scheduled according to the extinction qualifying, which we did not cover, which was basically the drivers on the bubble on whether they go to the pro split or the AM split of this race. So they don't have too much time to dilly-dally here. Hopefully this should take off pretty quickly, Joey.
Yeah, I know that it's always tough to get all of the competitors lined back up, and I know that in the real world, it's incredibly tough. It's like running a daycare center out there right now, so I understand what the race control guys are going through.
Not something I think they anticipated as being an issue. This is, again, a unique sort of format here that they're running. This is not something that you can just do straight up within the sim, and so they all have to do this manually. So sometimes things will go awry. I had the honor of getting to call the SimSport race of the Pacific region last night, and they did have a little practice, but I guess we didn't experience that before. As you can see, drivers trying to take advantage of everything they can, trying to get those tires warmed up so that they've got some temperatures here, Ozzy, once they do get going.
Yeah, we see some tire warming out there in this, in a very, very typical racing manner, in a very fair racing manner, I must say. That is something that drivers do both in real life as well as in simulated motorsport, in sim racing. And here we see them lining up once again on the grid. 3 rows, so we are 3 wide, 3 deep, heading for the start of this one. And I'm looking at one of the... Hang on. Is that an extra prototype on the... No, there's one GD car missing.
Yeah, but it looks like one of the LMP2s is back amongst the LMDHs, and I'm not sure why.
I think what's happening is they're leaving room on the racetrack for this last GT3 to make to its grid position. And I see Andrew Waring, he's out headed past turn 7 down kind of the back straightaway right now. So he's not even halfway around the racetrack.
Well, and you noticed something interesting about the start as well, Joey. Speaking of keen observations, what did you pick up about the difference between our GT3 mates?
Just on the initial start, both of these Audis definitely got the better launch than the single BMW lined up there. We'll have to see if that is consistent on the second start, but both of them dominated it.
I wonder if that's due to the weight distribution between the cars, because the BMW is notoriously front-engined, not quite front-wheel drive, thankfully, but front-engined, as we see Waring taking a bit of a shortcut through the Le Mans complex on this Sebring racetrack, and whereas the Audis are, of course, mid-engined, so you should theoretically have more rear traction. But as Joey, you whispered into my ear, sent me a note as well, it could be down to the equipment, second clutches, all that sort of thing that some drivers will have configured and some drivers won't have, because you don't usually do standing starts with GT cars.
All right, so they got a little bit of practice here, so hopefully everybody's maybe worked the bugs out in terms of their start. And you're right, yeah, everybody's now just going up into position. Let's try this one more time here, as race control is happy with how they're lined up now. Going to give them the countdown once again. And looks like they're giving them just one little last mark from race control, letting them know that everything's ready to go. Listening for the countdown here behind the scenes from Mike Willett. The man in charge here has been in charge of this series since the very beginning of it. Oh, they're just trying to get them a little bit closer in start position here.
You see Adam State giving half a car away on that inside line in the second row.
He is indeed, and green flag is out for the GT3s. It looks like Waring is off the quickest on the inside, but a little better for Pataska in that BMW as he's able to split them. And green flag being given now for our LMP2s as they are off and away.
And look at the state of that start by the 98. Drop down all the way to the final place, actually fighting out for the second place as the hybrids get after them. Brian Boomsma and all the others setting up after the LMP2. So that's how small the difference is between them. Ross Banfield. Oh, and that's Brian Boomsma in the number 1 car, Forged NRG team. And he was very sideways indeed as we now settle back to watch the LMP2s try to catch the LMP1s. Not LMP1s, LMP hybrids. GT3s. Third time's the charm.
The GT3s are already out of the hairpin now, as you can see. LMP2's just heading through there. There is our lead cars. Waring's still up at the front. I think they're doing the smart thing here, Joey, and not fighting each other all that much.
You took the words right out of my mouth. The GT3 cars are going single file, doing what they need to do, and it'll be interesting because I see a couple of these players in the race intermixed in class, but on the same team. What's the strategy going to be?
Already the LMP2s are catching them. It felt like they released them very quickly. Ozzy Milwain is approaching Kevin Hill, the back of them. But again, he's got to pass 3 cars to get this done. He'll have the Ullman straight, Ozzy, so that's going to help him out.
Absolutely will, and it's gonna be captivating to see who is gonna take it. Oh, and you can see Kevin Hill going very wide indeed, heading onto the Ullman straight, so that's gonna cost him a lot of positions and means that there's only 2 GT3s now left, and none of them now, as we see, that Milvain is gonna indeed take the lead here on this one. So Austin Milvain, Evolve Sim Sports, second fastest qualifier here, is gonna take the alpha position to the LMP2 class. There you go.
So GT3s and LMDHs will be given 10 extra seconds to hold in the race itself before they are released. Well, I guess technically it'll be the LMP2s have 10 less that they will be held because the GT3s will go first since that is a bit of a different situation there for them. That completes our Alpha qualifying, so we're going to go to a quick break here on the Global Sim Racing channel. We'll come back with coverage with the first round of the 2023 Major Series.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to ride around the world.
I'm Mick Claridge, and I'm going to ride around the world on my bike.
My son, he gave me advice at the start of this ride, and he looked at me and just said, "Dad, don't be a moron."
Let me do my animal signal to gain their respect.
How's it going, Sally?
Yeah, I'm alright, Mick. How's it going?
Worse than that bit in Lord of the Rings, where they go into the top and the spiders in the tunnel. I'm just hoping there's a spider at the top of this one to kill me. Freezing.
And I failed. I moroned up the ride.
It's gone from 8 down to only 5 here at the very end on the final lap as Will Lyon and Ryan Carwile are going to swap the lead. It's going to be Sanchez on the outside. Can Tyler maybe sneak it past both of them? Will the lap traffic play a part? Big lift from Lyon. That's going to send him backwards. Sanchez tries to find some clean air. They've lost ground to Carwile. Is it going to be close enough that they can catch him down to the finish? What about that lap traffic in front? That's Arribas trying to stay out of the way. He's actually helping Carwile. Carwile's got the draft, and he is going to take the win here at Indianapolis.
Looks like he might try to go around the outside here. Oh, it's going to be tight.
Lepisto wants another win, and oh no! They're gonna come together. They're absolutely coming together, and one is in the barrier. The other just manages to stay off. Lepisto doesn't hit anything other than fair and growl, but there goes a potential win.
Yeah, massive chaos there for those drivers. Here is the replay of that. Yeah, the little tip there from Van Rassel. Ooh, talk about some narrow margins from Stephen Orrell.
I was going to say, there's still a chance that we could see a change of position here. Togo's a little too hot, but Ove Trangrade gets very close. Surely he's going to try and send a go. No, he's covered off as Miko defends the inside, down into the Casio triangle. Now he has to be smooth on the throttle to seal the deal, and he is, as he comes to the line, our 7th different winner of the season to tie the record. Miko Makela gets his first ever win here in Japan. Yeah, he's going to have to really dive in to try and take it here. Decides not to. Maybe into the Melbourne hairpin. Ooh, it's a fantastic run. And defending the 183, tries to cover him off. Now he's back to the racing line, sends it in deep. And can he get it done? We won't get to know because we have to go to Tom Layton, who is going to take the win. And with this, the championship for the 2022 Porsche Owners Club Sim Racing Series. Look at that, celebrating because he knows he has gotten it. It's going to be a race to the line. Look at this, a drag race down to it at the end. Will it be Mayorga or Bolton? It's going to be Bolton. Welcome back to Sebring. Getting ready now for the first race of 2023 in the majors. It's the Predator format. Before we get to the race, though, in case you haven't been introduced to Sebring before, we do have our track guide to help get you a quick rundown of this famous sports car course, so why don't we head over there? Welcome to Sebring International Raceway. Home to the 12 Hours of Sebring, one of the most grueling tests in endurance racing, this is a track which has earned a fearsome reputation among drivers. The circuit itself is located on the southeastern edge of the city of Sebring, Florida, and was built out of Hendricks Army Airfield shortly after World War II. 3 layouts are currently in use, ranging from 1.7 to 3.7 miles in length. The longest course, which is perhaps the most well-known with it being the one used for the famed endurance race, shockingly still contains portions of the original airfield surface. It's this aspect which has become a signature feature of the track, making it extremely bumpy for racing. Sunset Bend in particular nearly shakes cars apart while they attempt to navigate the high-speed 180-degree corner. As you'd expect for the side of an airfield, there's nearly no elevation change over the course of a lap, but many of the curves are dramatically tall and unforgiving, daring drivers to glance them yet not hit them directly. Thankfully, places to pass are plentiful, including spots like the Hairpin and Cunningham. However, the many fast, sweeping turns creates a dilemma for car setup, since a vehicle that's made too stiff could wind up bottoming out on the onerous bumps. In the end, if you have the wherewithal to withstand the track's rough nature, you're likely to fare well. And since Florida fans almost always show up in huge numbers to witness this test of car and driver, you'll have plenty to impress at this legendary North American road course. There you see a little overview of this circuit, so hopefully you at least kind of know your way around and what to expect at this track. But let's introduce you to the race format as well and go over the race details for this event in case you aren't familiar with the Predator format. And it is round 1 out of 11 this season that they're going to be racing. Each one is going to be different in the major series. This one, a 2-hour race. The Predator format essentially means that the slowest class is starting first at the beginning of the race. Then from there, the second fastest class is released at a set time later, and the fastest class is released last to try and catch up. And they are all racing the same race to try and finish. So there are the different classes, but they are all in the same race, and it is who finishes first overall over these 2 hours. Now, it is a lap limited race just to make sure that they don't get any crazy shenanigans with an extra lap. So this is going to be 60 laps long specifically. There you see the 3 classes, LMDH, LMP2, and GT3 taking part. It's also open setup. Drivers can tweak it to whatever setup that they wish to try and find speed. And they also have a spare car. We saw that come into play last night with the Pacific region. So that is something that drivers will try to hold on to during the pit stops and whatnot in case they get any sort of damage. But should be fascinating to witness and see how everybody adapts to what is a very chaotic sort of race and also aggressive. We saw this last night too, Ozzy, that drivers make moves they wouldn't normally make in a multi-class scenario.
Absolutely. Well, it depends on the driver really, because you got a lot of types of drivers. You got the calm drivers that you pretty much imagine as being the Nordic type of sim racers, so to speak, who are kind of like, calm, calculating, collected, the 3 C's that you need in racing, absolutely. And then you get some of the more impulsive drivers, let's put it that way. And they can go for moves even in multi-class racing that are not recommended always for your or anyone else's survival. But absolutely here you do need to go for some of the moves, especially on the last laps when you do need to make that 1 extra tenth or 2 extra tenths. And I think in a way, if you take that slider far enough, if you tweak that slider far enough to the right and, amp it up, it kind of flips over to where the risky drivers are no longer in a winning position, where risks are such commonplace that a prototype driver who isn't taking the risks, who is being kind of calculating and calm and collected, can come away in a winning position simply because so many of them are losing time or damaging their cars due to a mistake. So that's one of those things that we might have to look out for. And it's also the kind of thing where drivers with experience from this format, which has only been seen in major series so far, mind you. So it's going to be major series veterans are going to have an advantage. They know what to expect. And they know what's about to come. Now, I know we got a lot of important things to go through before the race starts, but briefly, if I may, you mentioned practice earlier and tweaking the setups. Most laps, practice laps, in official sessions alone throughout this week have been done by Stuart Elder. That's 319 counted practice laps. That's not counting the time spent on the pit lane, the time spent watching telemetry, watching over data, tweaking your setup. That's just driving the car alone. 319 laps with an average lap time of 1:45 in the prototype classes. That's gonna come up to 9 hours and 18 minutes of on-track practice alone.
Wow. That is phenomenal. That's dedication.
This week.
And let's real quick talk about the sponsor of this series, because you need to make sure and check out the Majors Garage, home of free Baseline Plus setups. Get help from any of the garage coaches 24/7 and sign up now for awesome, affordable monthly subscriptions, telemetry, coaching, and more by simply clicking on our link in the description below. Also, if you use our special discount code MajorsGSRC, you'll get 10% off. Also, we're very involved in charity here in the Majors. They always have one every race that they raise money for. This one is the Wounded Warrior Project, which began in 2003 as a small grassroots effort providing simple care and comfort items to the hospital hospital bedsides of the first wounded service members returning home from the conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan. Today, through their direct programs in mental health, career counseling, and long-term rehabilitative care, along with their advocacy efforts, they improve the lives of millions of warriors and their family. To find out more, check out our link in the description below. So big thank you to Majors to helping with this fantastic cause. They've got about a minute left in practice now, and then they're going to be gridding up the GT3 cars who will be released on a rolling start for this race, Joey. And this is going to be critical, Joey, these first few laps, because it is going to be a couple laps before they release those LMP2s for them to try and get the foot down, because they're not going to have that multi-class traffic to hold them out.
Agreed. And we talked about the track a little bit earlier. It's known for its multi-class racing, but yeah, when you have just your single class on track, how far do you want to try to run versus fight within your own class before those other cars are actually released there? And Just to give another quick rundown, look out for the hairpin, which is known as turn 7, biggest and best passing opportunity on this racetrack. And then also Sebring, respect the bumps. Sunset Bend, also known as turn 17, always throws drivers for a loop. It seems like no matter how you approach it, you can never get through there the proper way.
Yeah, and it definitely threw a few drivers out last time. It looks like we're switching over to the race session. So the cars will now begin to grid up. Let's go through our starting order, even though this is going to be a little jumbled around because this is just the straight order as if they did qualify. And Ross Banfield is on the pole for this one. Tyler Maxson will start in second with Brian Boomsma in P3. It's Luca Harrison in fourth, followed by Eric Mickey in P5, David Soranzo in 6, and Joseph Homan in P7. Then you've got Nuno Costa in the 8th position, followed by Travis Henderson in 9th and Marcos Silva in P10. Stuart Elder is on the first of the next slide in 11th, as Trevor Vorosky starts 12th, Sam Swallow 13th, and Maurice Camillion to his outside on the next row. You've got Robert Covey starting 15th and Kyle Murphy 16th. Ozzy, what's the LMP2 class looking like?
Well, funny you should throw it to me, because there is one Aussie on the front row. That's Ozzy Milven. He'll be starting second in the LMP2s, behind or alongside Adam State, the independent driver taking the pole position honors in that class. Edward Shelley starting third with Eric Dalla Riva fourth. Then you got Ryan Wasilewski in fifth, Hans Blancard in sixth, Tom Guest 7th, Sasha Black 8th, David Gargaro Jr. 9th, and Roy Maas in 10th position. That is 26th overall. Then you got Spencer Todd in the next slide with Jeff Schmeier in 12th position in the class, 28th overall. Gary Thomas, Marcus Naber, David Michael Nichols, Philip Peixoto, Jason Wallott, Matt Odell, and Patrick Kopp round out your LMP2 field. And next up, Joey, you got the humble but peppery GD3s.
Yeah, Andrew Waring, who we saw in that Predator knockout round there, has pole position in the number 3 machine. Dallas Pataska joining him alongside in the row 1. Kevin Hill, 3rd spot. Mark Heron, 4th. Nathan Medina there in the top 5. Ryan Walker, 6th. Kenneth Reeder in the 7th spot. Håkan Schote, 8th. Cloud Belville, 9th position. And then Dick Mueller rounding out the top 10 in the GT3s. In the 11th spot, we have Stefan Bukis, Jeroen Kaiser, David Baker, Nick Horvath, Daniel Davis, Gerard Gilbert, Manuel Polanco, Jeff Cardamone, Mike Golady, and Jan Baroni rounding out the 20 cars in the GT3 field.
Who are already caught up behind the pace car here. Warren going to lead them away here for the start of this race. We did see the Evolve SimSport team drivers fare pretty well and actually finish very close to one another in the Pacific race, Ozzy. That's one factor that takes a huge part of these majors races is the team aspect. Usually we just see that on the oval side, but being able to share the setups, share tricks, working together seems to really pay dividends here when you're racing in the majors.
Absolutely, Joe. Having been part of big teams and having also competed independently in my time, I can tell you that having 3, 4, 5 guys work over a setup versus working at it alone is a huge difference, because you can have 3 guys, 4 guys doing different things, trying out different things simultaneously. And then you can have a couple of guys just running the baseline, essentially running the previous version, doing laps in, seeing what the times are with that. You have more minds to expand on different ideas. You can try out different things. You can essentially, it's a time multiplier is what it is. And it also saves a lot, and having people around collaborating with the setups, it's helping so much. You can do so much more when you have more people working on it. Now, of course, it's diminishing returns with more time you spend on the setup, but generally speaking, the bigger the team, the better usually, especially if you have people who can work together very well. And as you can see on the front of the field, we seem to indeed have a lot of people who work together really, really, really well.
Yep, and it helps to have specialists in certain cars and formats as well. So we'll see who has been giving that slight edge to their teammates here in the series for the first round as they come out of Sunset Bend. And Andrew Waring has control of the fields, waiting for the green flag now as he leads them up. And there it is, green flag is out. Pretty good start there for Waring, not so for his teammate. Kevin Hill has Dallas Pataska to his outside as they approach into turn 1. Is it going to be Pataska able to slip up the inside? Yes, it is. He moves into second. Same thing with Mark Herron there, managing to get into fourth.
Mark Herron slipped up the inside there in turn 1. I'm sorry, Ozzy, but yeah, he made a great move. And a little bit further back, I think it's about 10th place is 2x2 around turns 3, 4, and 5, headed down in towards the hairpin for the first time.
So as they come out of Big Bend into the hairpin, it looks like Waring's going to be safe from them. Not seeing too many battles up at the front. I think everybody kind of knows the deal. Up in the back, though, there are some side-by-side racing trying to scrabble for position amongst them. There you can see on screen as they exit out of the hairpin towards the Fangio chicane, trying to sort themselves out up to Cunningham. They've got about 3 laps before they release the LMP2s.
Yep, and LMP2s are going to be getting away at that point. They're chomping at the bit already, watching these guys drive around, and meanwhile they have to kind of get that preparation. It's weird to have you preparing for your race while there is another race still going on, and you are in that same event. You're like, oh my, they're running away. But at the same time, you're trying to kind of watch if there's any mistakes, if there's any major mishaps that are going to happen maybe early on. I'm watching the battle for position number 3, and Kevin Hill seems to be holding back Mark Herron pretty well so far. Interesting thing I also noticed from the start, Joey, is that, and I want to throw this to you specifically, Mr. Atterbury, because you're the Sebring expert and racing expert. Dallas Pataska, who started on the front row, second place, he was holding very far back on the start. Do you think that may have been because he was trying to gauge when our pole sitter was trying to, that's Andrew Waring. No, that's not Andrew Waring, that's of course, that is Andrew Waring.
Andrew Waring, our pole sitter, yes.
Yes,
oh,
yes.
no, and we
I'm
actually just had problems with our
up.
3rd place runner on track.
Oh. Yeah, he is back down into 6th place, Kevin Hill, with issues in ahead of him. A little slip up as Walker gets hit by Herron, who was off course. They both continue on, and I don't see any meatball flags for them, so I think they managed to get away with it. But we saw last night damage on the cars. If it slows them up on pace, that's going to hurt you until you can get in to get that repaired.
Ozzy, to your point, I don't like to game starts up front, and I actually think we just saw Dallas Pataska go around Andrew Waring for the lead. I think it's because Dallas has more pace in the BMW right now than Andrew Waring has in the Audi, but I am not a fan of gaming starts. I don't think he was trying to game a start because he didn't have a big accordion effect in the field, but it's definitely something to watch out for.
It does.
Absolutely. And before I let you continue, Mr. Peak, I'm just trying to think of the fact that maybe he was trying to see when the other driver started and held back a little bit because of that. But you're right, we shouldn't be gaming the starts because that's easily going to lead to terrible, terrible things and a lot of arguments that could be avoided. Back to you, Joe.
Indeed, and yes, that is Pataska now leading Waring, but Medina is up into 3rd as Walker falls to 4th with his little bit of contact. Hill still going in 5th. Oh, and Herron just spun in the background there. It looks like he is off and into the tire barrier. He's facing the wrong way and is trying to get this thing going. The 940 falls to the tail of the GT3 field.
Wow. It's just so unfortunate there for that 940 of Mark Herron because he was having a really good run, and that corner in specific, turn 16 is really, really slippery. Even in real life, it has a ton of off camber. It's just slightly off crest, and it's so easy to loop the car around, especially working these first couple laps. The tires are still getting up to temperature.
Ooh, 3 wide almost there as they vie for 13th position. That's David Baker who manages to come out on top amongst them. Cardamone there behind with Gerard Gilbert now slotting in. Really a 4-car fight as they're catching up to Stefan Beckwey in the 787. So this is looking like it is going to remain tight here in the back of that GT3 field. Still, we're waiting for the cars to be released in the LMP2s as we're on lap 3, so it should be pretty soon. As they come out through Fangio once again. This is a battle a little bit farther up. This is the fight for 6th position. Kenneth Reeder leading Hekon Schott and Belval in behind him. Looks like Mueller and Kaiser. So 5-car train, all vying for that 6th spot out of Tower, with Hakan very much hassling him there, Osley, and I'll leave it up to you to try and pronounce that name correctly because I'm a little bit lost on that one.
Which one was it?
The 101 car.
The 101 car, that would be Håkan Schött.
Is it
so
really?
Funny thing, yeah, funny thing is that the A with an O on top of it is actually pronounced O. It's a Swedish O, and it exists even in the Finnish alphabet, even though our O is pronounced differently. Language facts, in lap 4 of the race, in Swedish the O is pronounced, regular O is pronounced like U. So in Finnish we have a city called Turku, which in Swedish is Åbo, and it's written A with an accent on top, B, O, and it's pronounced in Swedish Åbo, which is the weirdest thing. Go on, back to racing, show.
Yeah, as to the inside there, that's Claude Belval. Dick Mueller unable to hold him off. Claude going to be able to defend down into turn 3, and that keeps him in the 8th position. They keep fighting like this. I think Nick Horvath might start to catch up from behind as we continue to watch on board there with Mueller for a brief moment. Still haven't seen the cars released, though. Remember, it was the LMP2s that won, so they get a 10-second bonus that they will be released a little earlier, while the LMDHs will be released 10 seconds later. And weaving out of the hairpin, this is mostly a steady front group, Joey. I think they are trying to take advantage of this clear track while they can.
Definitely the front 5 are. They're lined up pretty nose to tail. It all the way back to Ryan Walker that you see behind Kevin Hill here. He might be the only car that's getting a little bit held up, but even then, I think he's in the benefit of the slipstream. I'll be curious to see when these other cars are released, the racing that will happen, because like you said, it's pretty tame right now. Is the racing going to happen once the other cars are released, or do they still stay pretty calm?
Coming out of Le Mans corner, that's Hill still trying to get away from Ryan Walker. Actually, I think he overtook him recently. Yeah, that moves Hill up into 4th now. He was all the way up in P3 earlier on in this race, and is trying to make up for that mistake here as Nathan Medina has distanced himself by about a 1.5 seconds. Ooh, battle side by side between the Dog Bear machine coming up between his fellow teammate out through Sunset Bend. A little bit of blinking in the background for somebody as we go wheel to wheel coming up to turn 1 as well. And looks like Hakan is going to be overtaken by Kenneth Reeder, who gets 6th spot.
Yeah, Reeder up in front of Schott there, and then it's Dick Mueller behind Schott. Claude Belval, this is a stack up of about, oh, look at this, about 6 or 7 GT3 cars in one of the narrowest sections of Sebring. This is turns 3, 4, and 5 here, really technical, all about getting the power down in the run into turn 7 here after this straightaway.
Belval starting to get closer to Mueller. Does he try and make a move into the hairpin? It's way far back. Somebody back there is trying to take a peek. I think that's Nick Horvath on Kaiser. And he doesn't make the position, though he certainly thought about it. They remain in a train, just waiting for someone to break, a mistake to happen. And we have been given the 1-minute warning for the LMP2s.
Yep, I'm watching the LMP2s out here on the pit lane, still standing stationary, but they're getting ready to go. It will be Adam State and Ozzy Milvain and Edward Shelley and all those other guys in the LMP2 class who will be soon joining these GD3s out there on the battlefield. And you said 1 minute warning. Well, it's about 1 minute from that point to the main straight, so I think we might actually see the LMP2s joining the middle of the pack, Joey. And that's going to be, as a racing driver, that's going to be a mighty interesting experience to get into the groove of the multiclass right from the get-go.
The merge will be interesting, and I'm happy we're covering this because Goat has not let go of Reeder since Kenneth Reeder got past him, and in fact, Dick Mueller was almost up the back end of that Ferrari, but here we come through turn 17, Sunset Bend.
And they've been given the green flag. The LMP2's trying to trundle out. Ooh, really having to make a dive there to the inside as Håkan is trying to see if he can overtake Reeder before they find a flurry of LMP2s. And they are going to come out right out to the outside of that battle. This could be bad. They're going to be 3 wide. Hopefully everybody gives space, and they do. But now the chaos begins.
I love this. I love the chaos. Sometimes you have to embrace the chaos, really. Oh, and there's a spinner. There's a spinner. A couple of cars contacting. That's Kenneth Reeder up into the wall in his BMW. Car number 41 is up into the wall at turn number 3. And he's actually stuck in the wall. Number 41, he's actually stuck in the wall, and he had to sadly retire. And we got more cars around as well. David Baker, who is the most experienced driver in this field, is on the straightaway, and he is parked up, and Gary Thomas in his number 12 machine has damage as well. We are trying to figure out everything as we speak, but a lot of chaos and carnage, as we expect when you release a bunch of prototypes into the GDMS.
There is an absolutely pile of cars off the track at the hairpin, probably about 6 or 7 of them, unfortunately, because a few came to a halt. I think Jason Wallet amongst them that came to a standstill, Gerard Gilbert as well. And unfortunately, it just forced everyone to scatter in that bad situation all around. And I think we've been giving the 1 minute warning for the LMDHs recently. But Adam State continues to lead the LMP2s for the time being. I'm checking to see if he's managed to get ahead of all of the GT3s. Not quite. Looks like he's got 3 more to go.
I think that the biggest mover through all of that was Schote in that blue Ferrari. It was Dick Mueller that got into Kenneth Reeder. We saw that kind of trigger in the turns 3, 4, 5 complex, and Schote was able to scoot right on through, and this is the battle for the lead. This is still Andrew Waring in the green and black Audi hunting down Dallas Pataska in that red BMW.
Got to think it's going to be imperative for him to stay close to that leader. Last night we saw gaps open up quickly to where 1 hour through the race there was 30 seconds from P1 to P2. So if they get away from you, especially once we start dealing with the traffic, it seems like it only just exacerbates itself as things carry on. But he's keeping it within half a second here, Ozzy, as we now come over to our LMP2 drivers. And they are weaving their way through the 3, 4, 5 complex.
They are, and you can see, a little bit squirrely there from a couple of guys, and they are really trying to figure this track out at this point in time. You can see Jason Wallet, David Gargaro, Matt Odell, Marcus Naber, and Gary Thomas in that back. And look at the state of Gary Thomas's car right on the back of this queue. It's missing its rear wing. It's missing a lot of the front, and somehow the car number 12 is still going, as we are watching 661 of Matt Odell actually making a move on Jason Wallet there, but Jason Wallet will be able to hold on that position for now. Great racing there, coming side by side to the tower corner. This is a difficult one, it's a treacherous one. Don't cut too far to the inside. Matt Odell making the move, but Jason Wallet is able to hold on to the outside. That's not an easy task to do in that corner. It's a very tight place. And here comes Naber. Marcus Naber is now looking to join the battle, not able to do so just yet, so we stay with the status quo for now. Wallet and Matt Odell and Marcus Naber, and Jason Wallet has a bit of damage on his rear end, but he is still able to hold back Matt Odell and Marcus Naber. And meanwhile, we are watching the car number 52, that is Kevin Hill, who is working with the traffic as we speak. Fastest laps now starting to come to the board, Joe, and meanwhile, the hybrids are getting away from the pit lane.
just as the field is coming through again. So everybody's going to be all clumped together here. Boomsma is able to get out first, just past the LMP2 of Sasha Black. And this is going to be tough if they have the LMP2s in amongst them, because the lap difference, Ozzy, between LMP2s and LMDHs is not as drastic.
No, it's not. And it's one of the other things is that now we have 3 classes walking. We have the GD cars, which have a huge time difference, lap time difference between the prototypes, and then the prototypes who are not really that far away from each other. You look at the qualifying times and you can see, and even practice times, and you can see the difference is 1 or 2 seconds, 3 seconds at most between the LMP2s. Oh, and there's one in the wall. That's Nuno Costa, car 954, in the wall on the LMDH class, and sadly he is forced to take a toe to the pit lane on his first lap of the race. So already chaos unfolding here at Sebring. And Joey, well, this is sadly something that we may have been able to expect when you're thrown into a racing situation so soon after leaving the pit lane.
Agreed. I think I'm seeing a lot of LMDHs just with cold tires, but you're right, Ozzy. This format just feeds into needing to race immediately with how these cars merged out into the middle of racing both times. It's feeding into the aggression of the drivers, but it's providing great action on this racetrack.
You can see them having to find their way through here down the Ullman Straight as Maurice Gromillion gets down to the inside before Sunset Bend in the 044. He's currently 12th within his class as they go by some of the slower. Oh, and that's trying to get into pit lane. That was, I think that was Ross Banfield, who was experiencing some damage, and he's in the LMDH class. I'm not sure what exactly happened there. And
He's
we'll see.
the pole sitter.
Was it Banfield? I thought it was.
No,
Banfield
was the pole sitter on LMDH class, yeah. He was the fastest qualifier, and he was trying to get to the pit lane at the last second, getting hit by Kyle Murphy. So that's Banfield taking a lot of damage and having a pretty big handicap early on in this handicap race.
All right, switching back now to Boomsma up at the front with Maxon just behind him. And that is Blancart there in the 573. That is giving chase in LMP2, so he is not racing with him. Eric Mickey is separated by that LMP2, probably would like to get ahead of him to see if he can keep up with those top 2 in these early stages, not wanting to lose touch with them. And as we jump back now, this is down out of Tower once again, it looks like. And another one of our LMDH is able to tell them, usually by the nose of those cars, very distinctive in comparison to the LMP2s.
And those were going by our GT3 leaders there, Dallas Pataska and Andrew Waring, who you see coming out of turn 16 there, coming onto the back straightaway. And here we have all 3 classes on one screen.
Here we're getting a
we're
replay
get a
up.
on. Yep, we were about to say the same thing. So here we see Costa heading into the wall at the exit of the hairpin corner, and that's going to be the front end of that car done. And that also means that Costa's race, well, it only lasted for about half a lap, and that's always a disappointment, Joe.
Yeah, but he does have the spare car, so maybe he can get back out there. Also worth noting that Ozzy Milwain has to come into pit lane. I'm seeing a number of others joining him. Marco Silva just popped into his pit stall, so attrition might be a little high here unless guys start to clean this thing up at towards the front in the GT3s down through the first corner. Still watching Kevin Hill versus Ryan Walker. And it does look like Ryan has that track advantage for the time being. The Lambo is got about 0.8 of a second over Kevin Hill. You know, the other interesting thing that we haven't mentioned yet, Ozzy, is the fact that it is limited down. It's pared down now between the Pacific and Atlantic. We used to have the international, the European, and the Americas region. So from 3 to 2, there's a lot of compressed talent all merged together.
Absolutely. Absolutely, a lot of people are now merged together, having to forced to compete with each other, and I think that's a great change as we are seeing the Milvain replay, what happened to the 114 in the Sunset Bend. The most difficult corner in America, maybe the world, and here we see again why just getting a little bit loose, and that's when you run too close to the back of another car, Joey, really, when you get that air wash and you get that you lose the downforce from the front and you get the turbulent air, and when that happens in a prototype car which has a lot of downforce, relies on that downforce as you're trail braking, it can lead to a very quick spin.
It can, and dirty air does a lot of things, but here we got Mark Herron going around Cardamone. That's a power move around the outside. Herron and Jeff, they've been battling it out for the last handful of laps, and it seems Mark Herron finally makes his way around the Porsche up into the 11th place position overall right now in the GT3s.
Yep, so this is a little bit towards the end of the mid-pack here amongst our GT3 fighters. And Herron bringing it onto the Ullman straight, trying to carry that speed, that grunt that BMW has. We're taking a look now into turn 3 amongst some of our LMDHs as they work their way through there, and actually catching up, it looks like, to, I think that's our leader, Dallas Pataska. Yes, indeed. So going to get one of their laps back. Marcus Neighbor is going to put himself one more lap down, or one more lap up, I should say, as he is now 4 laps down currently from the lead car overall at this point.
It's really interesting to see the mix, especially as these LMDHs are starting to get their feet under them now with some warm tires and really starting to carve their way through the field. And we're watching this go around turn 16, down the back straightaway once again, and headed down to that turn 17 Sunset Bend. And Ozzy, I know that you mentioned it just a minute ago, and turn 17 just in general is a doozy. And I will say, in real life versus how the sim is driven, it is slightly different. Here in the sim, it seems to be a little bit more of a wider entry with a later apex to really capitalize on the exit speed.
We're going to go 2 by 2 here into turn 1. It's Gamillion around the outside of Sasha Black, and the yellow machine carries on down into turn 3. Black slots back into line to give that one up. Ahead of them, Schmeier and Elder were also vying for track position coming through that first corner. Will we get a nice run from Black out of turn 5? Doesn't appear to be so, but they're now joined by Kyle Murphy and his LMDH, so should make short work of these LMP2s once he gets down to the inside. Now, they are allowed to defend from faster classes, but they cannot try and weave to block.
Joe, something we haven't really talked about this race yet is going to be the fuel strategy game. I assume that with 60 laps here, they're going to probably have to make one fuel stop, but that's going to come at different times per the classes.
It was fascinating last night. So the GT3s are basically just shy of that 1 hour mark, and some were able to make a single stop, but many had to make a 2 stop, and some even had to change their strategy based on damage that they got. So yeah, it's going to be wild to see who's able to save the fuel. In fact, the eventual second place finisher, Christian Challoner, was on a 1 stop and then suddenly got hit by another car and had to switch it up very late after he had done immense fuel saving for most of the race.
So that's something we haven't talked about either, is the damage that you can pick up, and also jumping the curbs here at Sebring can produce that floor damage on those hybrid cars.
Yeah, and so one of the things I do want to mention, Waring, yes, Joe, thank you. Waring is still following Pataska here in the second place of the GT class, and indeed the overall lead. And you mentioned fuel strategy, guys. Well, what I think Waring is doing here is exactly that, because you're behind the class leader. And really, you're behind the class leader, Dallas Pataska here. You're in the best possible position. You can follow them. Their pace is surely satisfactory to you, and you can save fuel. and you can just listen in on Andrew Waring potentially if we go on board with him, and you can hear how early he is lifting off the throttle going into the corners, and he has the potential to do that. And there's a lot of places, Joey, here at Sebring to save fuel. Do just that, you know, there's a lot of places you can lift off early here, heading into this complex. You can potentially use the throttle a little less, and there's so much more besides.
And to talk about fuel saving just a little bit, we saw Dallas Pataska with the early speed on Andrew Waring, and Andrew Waring really just kind of let that BMW go. And I thought that maybe Pataska had overall pace, but it doesn't appear so. Andrew Waring has hung out right there, and to get to that fuel save, he has the advantage now of being in that slipstream to use that fuel save following the other car.
Yeah, and we saw this exact situation with Lachlan Capel and Christian Challoner, who were our top two in the GT3s, where Christian Challoner just kind of hung out behind him and saved enough to make it halfway, just couldn't keep it up in the second half after he got his damage. So right now, Andrew Waring doing exactly what he needs to do as we ride on board, watching behind the BMW. Worth noting as well, there's a slight difference in fuel consumption between the makes of cars. The Audi, kind of known for being pretty good. It did get nerfed in a recent patch to help even it out a little bit more. But I got to think that maybe retained a little bit of that, and perhaps that's why Waring decided to run the R8 here. Ozzy?
Yep, and that's one of those things that people really only find out through meticulous practice, because these cars get updated on iRacing all the time. So there's this little balance of performance fixes, BOP as it's often called. And now they might be minor, you know, 1%, 2% more aero drag on some cars. Maybe they make the fuel tank smaller on some others, they adjust the power gains, whatnot. But they can make all the difference when you're doing a 1 hour stint. And in GT3s, you pretty much always aim for that even hour, because races are usually even hours. You want to make it to that 1 hour point, so you're good on strategy. You don't have to make that extra pit stop, because that extra pit stop is always going to cost time, even if it's just a splash and dash, as you call it over on the stateside. It's still going to be like 20 seconds, 15 seconds, 20 seconds extra of going through that pit lane. So it's going to be still a lot of time lost, and time that you cannot simply have back. And oftentimes it is much, much more efficient and quicker, as we are watching the hybrids battle here with some LMP2s. It's much quicker to, have save that fuel instead, even if it feels slow, especially if you're in a position where you have that drafting partner, because that's going to be so great, and it's going to be so useful to you as well. So that's why I think Andrew Waring is really happy with how his race is going out there at the front, and it's where Eric Dalla Riva, Edward Shelley, and the other P2 guys wishes they were much closer to this man who we are following right now in the back of TSQ, Adam State.
Yeah, as they go by Kenneth Reeder, our last driver running in the GT3s currently. Make easy work out of him. Wasilewski thought he was going to maybe take a peek down to the inside on Guest, but no, he's going to stay put in that 5th position amongst the LMP2s. Still currently 4 laps down from the GT3s, but his early days were only a quarter of the way into the race here, Joey.
Yeah, still a long ways to go, and here you see a little bit of side damage on that number 86 machine of Ryan Wasilewski. Always a fast driver, and I think it actually extends up into the front left fender there, and you see Ryan go off track. Very tricky corner. If you hit the apex curb on that one, it definitely can send the car flying off to the left side of the racetrack, which you saw happen.
Yeah, that's one of those things where, and I just have to chime in here, the tower corner, we can talk about that briefly actually, Joey, if Joe doesn't mind. Joe and Joey, why am I stuck with Joe and Joey? It feels like a comedy skit here. So regardless, tower corner, the inside curb there on turn number 13, that's like, you want to get as close as possible because it's a really narrow corner. In rallying, we'd call that narrows or sumppu in Finnish rally pace notes, where it just tightens up so much and it gets into this narrow choke point in the apex of the corner, and you don't want to cut too far to the inside because there's that high curb waiting for you. But if you go even a little bit too early to the throttle, if you hit the bumps just a little bit wrong, it's gonna throw you out of the racetrack, and the walls are really not very far at all. And to top it off, Joey, it's not exactly the easiest approach to the corner either.
It's not the easiest approach, and I think that's what makes Sebring one of the coolest racetracks to drive as a driver. It's challenging no matter what turns you come up to, and also we see all this mixed class traffic. Ryan Wasilewski's still trying to work his way around Tom Guest in the middle of all of this, but the tower turn, I find what you have to do is you have to be patient, Ozzy. On the front end, you're using the brakes to stop the car, and if you turn in too early, like you said, you're going to hit the apex curb, which isn't good. You just have to be patient with your hands, not turn too early, wait for the grip to come in on the front of the car, let it do its thing naturally, and more often than not, the car is happy when you let it do that.
You're asking for patience from a Finnish man who has been awake for 18 hours and is down on 3 pots of coffee. Good luck with that. It's like it's honestly feeling like a squirrel on drugs right now. But regardless, we're trying to move on with this one. The tower corner, very great explanation. I'm sure we'll see a lot of drama in that place throughout the course of this race, because it's really one of the corners where I have a love-hate relationship with. But what I do agree with you is that Sebring is an awesome racetrack. It's a great challenge, and once you get to the flow of it, and it will take some time, it's a great place. Probably one of my favorite racetracks, if not the favorite. Also, for anyone British watching there, it's the greatest flat racetrack in the world, including Silverstone. Fight me. Joe, up to you.
Thanks for all the hate mail that we're now going to get. As we can see, this is Gomillion that's been in quite the tussle with Travis Henderson for 6 in the LMDH class here, and they've got a throng of slower class cars that they've been having to kind of tiptoe past in the process. Just behind them, that's Tom Guest, who is not racing them for position right now because he's in the LMP2s. And coming out of the hairpin, does look like Gomillion might be a little bit under threat if Henderson wants to fight him. Remember, they both want to be incredibly quick here, Joey, by trying not to lose much time. But also, if you're Henderson and you think you're faster, you don't want to sit and wait behind him for the whole race.
It's the balancing act. How aggressive do you get with the traffic, especially early on in your first trips through them, versus when do you wait for the attrition to set in this race so that way you can turn faster laps through the traffic at the end? And that's what these drivers are deciding right now, is that, you know what, how many times do I want to take it 3 wide, or should I just sit here and be patient?
It's very much a risk versus reward, but the drivers who can be fast and aggressive are going to find big dividends come the end of the race. And flying down through the Collier section once again, a couple of our LMP2s fighting in amongst the GT3s, looking to try and find themselves a little bit of room. That is David Baker being overtaken by Matt Odell. He's chasing on David Nichols for 12.
Sorry, no need to go to it live right now. I just took a tour to the pit lane, but I hate to report that Stuart Elder has just had a major accident in the Sunset Bend, and he is towing back to the pit lane. So car number 115, if we can see that later. Just saw it briefly, and there was also the 058 of Tom Guest involved in that one. Sorry, back to you.
Oh, and sorry, in the background, just saw somebody spin out. That was Jason Wallet. So he'll fall down to 14th, unfortunately. He's able to get it going once again. We saw a lot of that last night. Drivers coming off of Lamal Corner there, Joey, and it seemed like that concrete wall just had so many victims in the Pacific region.
Usually when you get loose off of exit at turn 16, you're right, it hooks to the drivers right in that concrete wall, so it's a lot closer than what you want it to, and always a dangerous area. And here we see the GT3 leaders actually approaching this turn 16, and it doesn't look like much. And I know you say it's a flat racetrack, Ozzy, but turn 16 just has the slightest rise at the apex, and then it also falls off on exit. It really is treacherous, and it goes to your point that Sebring is a fantastic racetrack. Flat-ish.
Yeah, kind of like flat-ish is also a great rally pace note, by the way. It's flat with an asterisk, and then you're gonna be very, very far if you got that wrong during the pace note run. But regardless, one other place where there is a slight elevation change, and it's very, very subtle, is that place we talked about earlier, turn 13, because you want to get close to that inside curb. There is a slight kind of like, it's not a bump, it's the opposite of bump. It's a kind of like little valley where you get a slight camber on the inside of the corner if you hit it just right, and you're gonna get that tiny little bit of extra grip, and it's gonna just release all the serotonin from your brain into your body when you hit that just right, because it just makes you so happy. But it's also a risk versus reward situation.
Gonna take a look at a replay here. This is with the car of Elder, I believe, Stuart,
yes,
that we're watching down into Sunset Bend, and yeah, just came together. And whoever that last car was, that was a Udox car. It looked like they had a real scare. I'm not sure if they got away with it or not.
No, they didn't. That's Stuart Elder back on the pit lane. That was the thing I mentioned earlier on. That was Tom Guest in that 058, and Stuart Elder, who we were watching 115, just getting a little bit too greedy into the Sunset Bend, hitting each other. And Stuart Elder, he's now back on the track, but he had to take his way to the pit lane. Couldn't even drive it from the last corner to the pit lane. Had to take a tow there, and a lot of different situations going on. Different situations going on. Never mind that little sound. So yeah, it's one of those things where you have a lot of chaos brewing, and you have to watch out for it all the time. But we talked about it on the start of the broadcast as well, Joe, how important, like how chaotic these races have been. You were watching it last night. You were watching this last season as well, unfolding this Predator concept, this series that really encourages, kind of like a different type of multi-class racing. And right now we're seeing that aside from the very, very few who have gotten away with it from the pole position, it's really, really the patient drivers who are starting to reap the benefits so far.
Okay, so you going out of this is like a doctor going, oops. You can't just say that and then pass it off and like, don't worry about it. What did you see?
Just a crash. There's been so many, I can't call them all. No, it was the Jason Wallet situation. He was a little bit loose earlier on before he had had a spin in the hairpin. So that's just Jason Wallet having a bit of a moment. That just caught my eye because I thought it was going to be a big one, but credit to him, it wasn't that big of a one.
Boomsma here still leading the LMDH cars, and that was the class that won back in the Pacific region, managing to get to the front right at the very end with a pass on the last lap around Sunset Bend. We'll see if Boomsma can do likewise, but it's going to be difficult to repeat what Hins did with his amazing heroics to try and take that victory. He's currently 5 laps down from the overall leader and still pushing hard. We're past the first quarter mark. We're now about 37 minutes into this 60-lap race. You can estimate about 30 laps here per hour as we go down to 8th place in the GT3s with Håkan Schutt still facing off with Kaiser. These two have been glued together, but they've also been holding on to Claude Belval here, Ozzy, as they've been trying to run down that 7, but it does look like the rear guard that Schutt is having to play is causing him a little time.
It is costing them a little time, and there's David Nichols as well, working a little bit of multi-class traffic out there as they approach the Le Mans complex. Meanwhile, we are watching on the main straight the leading duo of Waring and Pataska, who are still behind each other. Very, very close indeed.
Sorry, we got to go
Waring
back.
taking the lead, yeah.
We got to go back to the 65 car of David Michael Nichols. He got turned around by the GT3s that we were just watching as we've switched back over now to the lead in the GT3 class of Andrew Waring and Dallas Pataska. things definitely going a little bit awry in the mid-pack, and that probably won't be the last time we'll see that sort of drama as Warren continues to plug away, pushing the air for Dallas Pataska. It looks like they're going to get overtaken by Marco Silva. That's one of our LMDHs. As we come back to Håkan, who is now down into 9th position. He was involved in that melee that I had described there through Jean Debienne.
And to report on that melee, I think it was Mr. Schote there in the blue Ferrari that got into the back of David Michael Nichols. And David Nichols is dealing with a very loose race car. I actually think he got out of the groove a little bit, and that's why the Ferrari got up close to that prototype, because that's usually an area of the racetrack that you don't see the two classes really intermix.
Down into the hairpin, Kaiser still leading them. And now they're going to get interrupted briefly by Tyler Maxson, 2nd place in the LMDHs. And it looks like he's going to have a nice clear shot down into Cunningham ahead of them. He's trying to outrun David Michaels, who just had his little spin earlier. In fact, Michaels now catching up to the cars that were around when he had that little tussle out on track. And he is by on Håkan, who still fends off Mark Herron and Maurice Gomillion. Let's take a look at what happened here, and let's try and dissect this one, Joey.
Yeah, it all started just slightly before this. It's going into the complex, and David Nichols there in the prototype, he's going to slice underneath in front of the blue Ferrari, and he just has a little bit of a slide, and that's when the blue Ferrari catches him and unfortunately just makes a little bit of contact to Nichols' car.
And Joey, one thing that I noticed last night that I'm wondering if maybe a few drivers are missing here today, it seemed like the best drivers knew the timing of how the cars will behave and interact on their racing line. I saw cars dive in between two with just a car's width to get in there at the apex because they knew that the prototypes would leave that amount of space. Is that, you think, a big part of this is just knowing exactly how those cars are gonna handle around you?
That's going to make you a better racing car driver on the racetrack for sure. I don't think that specific incident was that situation that you're talking about, but you're right. There's areas that the prototypes are going to use the racetrack, and there's areas that the GT3s are going to use the racetrack, and they're not always the same place. So if you place your GT3 car in one area, it actually allows a nice safe line for these prototypes to go around, and you both are fast.
Well, coming around Homan here, and the 222 is going to try and catch up to Eric Mickey just ahead of him. This is for position. Travis Henderson's just a little bit up the road, but unless they catch traffic wrong, or at least Henderson catches traffic wrong, this is probably going to be the battle here for 6th spot in the LMDHs. And they do have a little bit of traffic that they are coming through. Gerard Gilbert going to be the first, and unfortunately that's a big checkup for Elder.
And Joe, something we haven't talked about yet, but it's going to come into effect, is the attrition rate so far. And I'm seeing a few cars that have taken some tows already, but more importantly, the GT3 class stays strong. And I mention that because those are the cars that everybody is going to have to work through to get to the lead.
Coming down through Bishop here, one of the fastest corners on the track, leading down into Jean Debienne and the Le Mans sequence as they try to carry as much speed as they can onto the Ullman straight. Holman still hot on the heels of Mickey, who is going to try and go by Elder. These two classes not that far apart in speed, and you can see that he's having trouble. Wonder if there's damage for Mickey, but he's quicker into the braking zone. Both of them able to sneak underneath there, Ozzy.
Yep, and I'm not seeing anything in front of the car at least. 102 looks pretty clear to me. Might just be a more downforce heavy setup, faster in the corners, a little bit slower on the straight line, and Homan is actually going to be a little bit hamstrung by Eric Dalla Riva heading into turn number 1, so he's going to lose a bit of time going through that complex. Going to have to work that all over again. Yep.
Back to Todd once more as we watch them down into the hairpin and around Hoken, who has been, man, he has just gotten plenty of screen time. Not sure if that's really what you want in the Predator format, if I'm honest.
Well, it's him and also Mark Heron in this black and maroon BMW that's right in front of him. Both of them have been involved in the wars. Unfortunately, the wars have not been nice to them. They're both down a few positions from where they started.
Now that's Jason Wallet just in front of us. These are both LMP2 class cars, 13th amongst these cars that they're vying for. As they head up into Bishop once again, there's going to be an awkward spot for Jeroen Kaiser. He'll be able to stay just out of the way as they sneak underneath down into Jean Debian. Remember, there's still so much to fight for. You might be far down in your class, but you could overtake a lot of the other class cars towards the end of the race. This is a good shot for Spencer Todd. Gets a nice run down the Ullman straight. He's got to finish it up coming into Sunset Bend, and he does so dutifully. Though he's got a little bit of traffic, so not quite over yet coming off the corner, having to split their way around Claude Belval. But yeah, looks like Wallet wasn't able to get the run that he needed. Now, did we have a change around up for the lead overall?
Yes, we did, Joe. It seems that Andrew Waring in that black and green Evolve Audi has made his way around Dallas Pataska. Remember, Dallas was in the red BMW and he was leading this whole race, and happened about 5 minutes ago or so, and I'm seeing Andrew Waring actually start to stretch out that lead. This is the biggest gap we've seen between first and second place runners in the GT3 class, up over 1 second currently.
And,
Whoa!
Oh,
big
wow!
moment here.
Joseph Holman, wow, he's around. And as we are trying to gather what happened there, I was just about to mention to the leading duo that I wonder if this is going to be now the result of the fuel saving we saw happening early on. So earlier on, it was fuel saving for Andrew Waring, staying behind Dallas Pataska, Joey. And now that he's gotten past Pataska, he can just get away, where Pataska has to fuel save more and more. He's losing a couple of tenths per lap. And also Waring is now taking the lead into all of these situations where they're going to have to work with some traffic. So that is going to have a slight effect too, even if you are the slower class. But I think this is well played so far by Andrew Waring.
And to add to that point, Ozzy, is that there's other classes out there, and through turn 17, that last lap, Andrew Waring actually got held up quite a bit, and the gap closed back down to under 1 second between Pataska and Waring for the lead. So I think it is far from over, Joe.
They come around once again on Sunset Bend. There's Jeroen Kaiser. Whoa, somebody off. That was Holman. Another of our hybrids. Well, he was the one that we saw have that spin down in the hairpin anyways. I think he was trying to get into pit lane. He found it eventually, Ozzy, but in a bit of an unprecedented way.
Yeah, that was less than the usual approach. Let's just say a little bit of an unconventional approach to the pit lane. But hey, one way or another, you have to like make it into the pit lane eventually. You have to scrub the speed down, and if you do it by spinning in a little bit more of a stylish manner, then more power to you. I wouldn't do that personally, but then again, I have to also crashed on the X-Top road Atlanta's pit lane. So, you know, you give and take. Everyone makes a mistake sometimes, and at least he didn't pull a David Coulthard.
Are you saying Finns make mistakes? Surely you jest.
Well, we are born.
While riding on board down through Cunningham here and into the Collier section, we watch from just over the left front wheel of Marco Silva, the number 970. He's looking to catch up to Kyle Murphy. You can just see him up the road, and looks like he's having quite a bit to do. Actually, no, that is yeah, that is Kyle Murphy. Yeah, that is Kyle Murphy, excuse me. And Gary Thomas in the number 12. So that's one of our LMP2s. He's able to get with him.
Joe, we were talking a little bit about strategy earlier, and one stop versus two stop. Well, looking at the laps in this race, we are approaching that pit window, and I actually think I see Tyler Maxson, who is in that hybrid class. He's the first down pit road. I wonder if this is a scheduled stop or if he is out of fuel.
Yeah, that could be. And yeah, actually, we should see. Yeah, LMP2s I think are at the limit of theirs now. Remember, they had that delay at the start. They were held for a long time, so it might be 50 minutes into the race, but it's 40 minutes that they've been running. So we're seeing Edward Shelley, Eric Dallariva are both in, and more of them should probably be plunging down and getting fuel and tires to finish off that first go. We believe it's a two-stop race for those LMP2s. Back to the number 52 of Kevin Hill. Hasn't really been able to make this up, Ozzy. Ever since he had that early drama, he's still sitting in 5th position and still stuck behind Brian Walker.
Yeah, I wonder if he's just biding his time, you know, trying to, as said, save fuel behind Walker and maybe stretch it to that one-stop region and trying to think that is his best shot to getting a good result here. He's 30 seconds behind the lead, however, and when you look at it realistically, he's 20 seconds behind the podium. That's Nathan Medina in position number 3 out there on the track, car number 2, and that's also his teammate. So he's getting data from Medina all the way and getting lap times and so on and so forth. And I think he knows that he doesn't really have a realistic chance to catch 20 seconds on his teammate over the course of 1 hour unless something drastic happens. And he thinks that it's in his best interests to try and follow Ryan Walker here, take that 4th place away from him and really pick your battles in that front. And that is one of those things that is really showing the professionalism of Kevin Hill in this situation, in that he doesn't really succumb to the primal instinct of a racing driver, which is of course to go faster when you make a mistake, to try and gain up that time, but instead looking at his situation, looking at it realistically, making a quick calculation and then approaching from this new vantage point. Okay, how do I maximize my race result from here on out? And another man who is trying his best to maximize his race result, but is really starting to have some good times out there at the front, is Andrew Waring, Joey, because I believe he hasn't been bored despite being in the lead.
No, he is in the lead. He's still got the 1 second gap over Dallas Pataska, and he's just had a lot of prototypes come through and actually riding on board. I believe this is Kevin Hill, which is one of his teammates, dealing with the same sort of thing. This is when these prototypes are now officially kind of racing for position with amongst themselves, and these GT3s are just kind of speed bumps. They're little roadblocks, and I guess if I was to picture it, if I was out there, it's like the Costco parking lot and you gotta get around the cones.
Okay, that's not where I expected that metaphor to go. As we come on to the front stretch, a battle between some of our LMDH drivers, and Marco Silva looks like he might have gotten past Kyle Murphy. That's going to be for the 6th position, a smooth move through turn 1. But they've got Jeff Schmeier playing a little bit of a fly in the ointment. That's going to be a holdup for Marco Silva. Could we see Murphy maybe catch back up, especially with a close moment like that, Ozzy?
Maybe, because each time you battle, each time you go side by side for an extended period of time, it's gonna make you lose time. And of course, if there's somebody who is behind, like Murphy, who is trying to catch up to that position, then you're gonna be very grateful that they are fighting. Meanwhile, Ross Banfield, who we remember had a very, very good qualifying, is right now here in the cameras, and we're trying to figure out exactly what is going on with him. He is just ahead of Matt Odell, passed him for position, so that is him up 1 place in class as well, and that I think promotes him overall Yeah, one place overall because Matt Odell is in a different class, of course, and I'm just trying to figure out the situation. Ross Banfield is in 6th place in his class, in the LMDH class, so not quite the race our pole sitter really wanted over here, but it's still an interesting one. He still has ways to go, time to make up. But so far in this event, as we are seeing, one of the prototypes pitting, that's Spencer Todd coming to the pit lane, in case you were wondering who it was. Still following, however, Banfield heading into turn number 1. So far, my prognosis of the race is this, Joey. And feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on this one. But I think out of everybody out there on the track right now, it's either going to be one of the GT3 leaders who is going to win this overall. So that would be either Andrew Waring or Dallas Pataska, or it's going to be Adam State, who we haven't mentioned too much throughout the course of this race, because he has held a lead of over 5 seconds for the entire duration of it.
Yeah, Boomsma here sitting pretty with the likes of David Michael Nichols, I'll get that name right eventually, just around them. Coming out onto the stretch to turn 3, Luca Harrison was trying to go by, with Nichols being one of our LMP2 drivers, and that's Blankert there in the number 573, putting his tires into the dirt and unfortunately costing him what would have been a good chance down into the hairpin, just when you want to be right up next to him. As they break into there, you can see how much time he gained. Oh, but he overshoots it just a little bit. This is, again, 411 spot within this class that these drivers are having to weave through the traffic and fight amongst themselves. Our lead cars in the LMP2s, by the way, are 3 laps down from the leaders. LMDHs are 4 laps down from the leaders still. So it's a ways to go, and still quite a few laps to make up. And I'm kind of in the camp of Ozzy at this point, that it is looking like the GT3s seem to have a bit of an advantage right now, but it's still a lot that could happen over the course of this race. Going to Yost now here, coming along the back stretch and down to the inside. Going to take the position guest, in the 058. With Pizzotto going to give up the Ghost, so that'll put Guest into 9th position in the LMP2s. Behind them, Sam Swallow from the LMDHs just blasts on by. And the other interesting thing about this, Joey, is the fact that a lot of these drivers are racing blind in a way. Unless you have someone on the box that's really kind of feeding you updates on the gaps up to the higher classes, you have no idea where you're going to finish until it gets down to the end.
It's really tricky to that point. When you're a racing driver, it's just you and the car out there, and you're told to do your job, but you're being relied on that information from your crew chief on what is happening and how hard to push, or can you save a little bit of fuel right now, or do I need to battle this car on the racetrack? And you're right, these sim racers are out there doing it by themselves, and it's easy to get lost at sea when you're only focused on what's happening right in front of you.
Yeah, you have no idea if your pushing is working. All you know is you got to keep pushing, and you don't know how safe you are. Does look like we've had a number of GT3s pit. Medina, Kevin Hill, Ryan Walker, Dick Mueller, Claude Belval. Looks like Mark Herron has also stopped. Busy pit lane. But critically, Ozzy, we have an hour and 2 minutes left to go. That's going to be just shy of being able to one-stop it. So this is too early for them. They've committed to a two-stop from here.
Absolutely. Unless they're going to pull off some heroics on the last stint in terms of fuel saving, then that's way too early. So what I'm looking at right now are the 2 leaders, however. Pataska in 2nd place, Waring in the lead. They haven't pitted yet. Dallas Pataska is still going on, as is Waring, so they have the right strategy call, and pretty much everybody behind them. You look at Kevin Hill, he's pitted. Bedina, he's pitted. Kaiser, I believe, has pitted, as well as Håkan Schött. So all of those guys are really out of it in terms of strategy. So not only are the two leaders, the fastest cars out there on the racetrack. They have the most fuel too. So this is really, and it really goes to show you that even though it's the major series, we have blended multiple regions into just two, the Pacific and the Atlantic. There's still a slight gap between, you know, good racing drivers, which these guys all are, and then the great and the experienced racing drivers, you know, the guys like Waring and Pataska. And I feel like this is not going to be the last time these two are going to battle it out. It's not the first time, nor is it the last time that these two are battling it out, because in terms of pace and in terms of strategy as well as preparation, they are just showing themselves to be, if not quite head and shoulders, then at least half head above the rest, Joey.
Saw Håkan come into pit lane, the latest to take his stop just about at the halfway mark. 30 seconds left in the hour, so I'm pretty sure he'll be fine on either side. It's the end of lap 29 for him, so yeah, that should be good. This is Waring. This is your leader here, being overtaken by his teammate Gagaro. Different class, but same team there with Evolve Sim Sport, all vying for the championship here. The team championship, honestly, is one of the hotly contested ones. Very difficult to take that. And Waring is indeed in at the end of lap 30.
And Dallas Pataska in the second place BMW actually stays out for another lap. Interesting here because that will, you know, it'll stretch him on the fuel. I don't think he's going to be able to overtake Waring, but a close call for Andrew Waring, Joe. I don't know if you saw that, but that prototype got very close to the rear wing as he was slowing down for pit road.
It does seem like communication has been a bit rough between the classes when pitting in. I've seen at least 3 or 4 drivers that have made contact or been caught out by other cars nearby when they were trying to pit and just were kind of in the way. Going back to Harrison now, back in the LMDHs. This is P8 amongst them. That's Eric Mickey directly in front as he's got to try and go by Belval. Thankfully, everybody was heads up as the track weaves back and forth in that spot on the track and always easily trip over each other through there. And forward from Harrison, that is Eric Mickey, just about 0.3 of a second up the road. They're going to now have to overtake Gagaro, who is in an LMP2. So he's going to be a bit slower, and especially in a really twisty section here, Joey, this might actually prove kind of difficult.
I love watching the differences between the prototypes, and here we actually have maybe just a little bit of contact onto the back rear of that hybrid car as they're trying to dice their way up through turn 16, one of the slipperiest areas of the racetrack. And you just see the speed difference between all 3 classes and how congested it gets.
Yeah, and now up past there through to Sunset Bend, the 609 swinging around in the dirty air and somehow still managing to stay glued to that track. Still can't overtake Mickey at this stage. Has Pataska pitted yet?
He
should be pitting this time.
Right now.
Yeah. Here he goes.
And so I actually think he's out of gas, Joe. I think he stretched it too far. He was 5 seconds off the pace there coming around turn 17.
Ooh, wow. That's going to be costly. So I expect Waring to be ahead of him then, since he pitted first and he wasn't trying to push it quite that far. Pataska, the end of lap 32, that seemed like an unnecessary risk, Joey, if you ask me. That if Pataska cost himself that many seconds trying to go slow just to get to pit lane, it's not going to save him in the end.
Let's reference your point just a minute or two ago, Joe, that these racers are doing that all by themselves, and if you're concentrated on something else going down into turn 17, it's really easy to miss your pit road entry.
That's a good point, yeah. So maybe that's why he went around that extra stop, and thank goodness if that's the case, that he had enough fuel. Waring is coming through the final turn. Pataska going now. Now, granted, he'll have to take on less fuel to get to the end from here compared to Waring. But Andrew's looking like he's going to come out just beside him, maybe. Waring is coming past the pit exit. This is going to be tight, and he'll retake the lead as Pataska separated briefly by the LMDH of Stuart Elder. But there you have it. That's P1 and P2 once again overall after the pit stops are done, and should be good to the finish from here.
and that's cold tires for Dallas Pataska right now. In case you're wondering, okay, if Pataska lost 5 seconds into the last corner, how is he only barely behind Waring? Well, the cold tires are the answer. So he was changing tires, as was Andrew Waring 1 lap ago, and you can see Dallas Pataska losing time hand over fist here on the first lap because of that. And meanwhile, we are watching car number 86, that's Ryan Wasilewski, having a great battle with Edward Shelley.
So as they exit onto the Ullman straight here, we've been seeing lots of kicks up of dirt, but thankfully we haven't seen many cars spin off into that inside wall, just a couple, whereas last night it was just a barrage of vehicles smashing into that concrete time after time. But the 86 still chasing on Shelley here, is not too far away from him. A little slow to the inside. Jason Wallet trying to stay off to the side in his UDOX machine, not wanting to become a hindrance to them. He's just racing his own race as we have now officially entered the second half of this event. Edward Shelley still running third of the LMP2s. This is a good spot, especially because you got to remember, even if you're not leading your class, Ozzy, if one of your class leaders wrecks out, then suddenly you're leading the charge.
Yeah, and if you fall, I will catch you. I will be waiting time after time. So,
I don't believe that for a second.
Yes. So you can see Adam State here in an excellent position, just working with the traffic. Riva also, you mentioned that, in a fantastic place, kind of like he's had a very, very quiet race. He lost about 5 seconds earlier in that massive scuffle that the LMP2s got themselves into. It was really, Adam State was one of the very few drivers who made it out of that without significant time and or damage losses in terms of time or damage. And since then he has held the fort in that 5 second lead, more or less. Now it has fluctuated a little bit. It has gone up to 6 seconds and then down to 5 seconds due to traffic and other changes that happen in a multi-class event. But Riva has never really lost the sight of the win, lost the scent of the win, and it only takes one half spin. Only one silly little incident that can happen so easily in a multi-class race like this from Adam State or somebody who just happens to be near Adam State, and it's Eric Dalla Riva right there in the mix, ready to pounce and ready to take that position away. And now, mind you, one more thing I will mention about these guys. Both Adam State and Eric Dalla Riva, they are rookies in this series. Neither has a single major series race under their belts. Dalla Riva has the backing of Evolve Sim Sports. He is in their Gemini lineup, whereas Adam State, let's remind you, is an independent driver looking for a team. And if you're looking for a team, if you're looking to get your name out there, what would be a better way than winning a major series event?
On screen in the meantime, we caught a fantastic pick there amongst Wasilewski and Shelley. Wash just drove right past him using Hoken as a little bit of a distraction for a moment. But Pataska here is chasing on Waring. But Joey, you've been paying attention to how Waring's been driving. You seem concerned about his fuel.
I'm not necessarily concerned. I think this is his strategy, is do maximum fuel save for probably the first handful of laps and then just kind of drive the rest of his stint normally. And that's what we saw earlier. If we remember, Dallas Pataska actually led the first half of the opening stint, and then Waring took it back near the end. And once again, just going down these straightaways, I don't see an unnecessary pace out of that Audi in front of him. Seems like he's just driving to a number.
And that's exactly what I saw Christian Challenger doing before his damage last night. As soon as he got it fixed, he boogied. He picked up the pace by a couple seconds. So, yeah, I think you're right. Andrew might be just trying to hit his marks here. And potentially Pataska, I wonder if he's doing the same, but he's got a lot, he's got a little more wiggle room, though, since he went a lap longer. So he might not have to do as much. He might just be content to sit and make Andrew sweat for this race, riding behind him this closely. You see the Satellite Racing driver just kind of hugging the rear bumper of that number 3. Both have been a part of the majors for multiple years now. So both kind of know how this all works, how this plays out. It's just who's got the best strategy and who's got the pace when it comes down to the end.
Looks like in the GT3 class, David Baker just passed Gerard Gilbert for the 12th position. I mentioned that because most of the GT3 class is actually pretty spread out, other than our lead battle that is coming down into turn 17, actually about to catch the other GT3 battle I was just mentioning.
Yeah, that is Ross Banfield going around them, and then Matt Odell going to follow through. Matt's being chased by Jeff Schmeier, who's a lap up on him, so that's not for position. As they go side by side in front of our GT3 leaders, they're going to make it out the other side nice and clean. But Pataska looks very unconcerned by the body language of that car up to now, not making any moves up to this point. Do we have an early taker here, Ozzy and Stefan Beckwith? Because I'm unsure if this is a scheduled stop and he's just going for a short middle stint, or what's going on here.
Well, he was having a very, I think he towed to the pit lane in lap number 6. He was involved in an incident in around 10, and that means that right now it's about on the schedule for him in that he got his spare car, going into his spare car, went to drive that 1 hour or so, and then Stefan Beckwith is now back on the track, back on the pit lane to go to the end of the race.
Got an interesting thing starting to happen here for Boomsma, trying to get back onto the lead lap with Adam State just in front of him. Once he does that, they're both going to be 2 laps down. But closing rate between the 2 prototype classes are very different to one another. As we watch Boomsma continue to creep forward and increase in the mirrors of Adam State. Adam might not be aware that this is to get on the same lap. All he's going to see, Ozzy, is on his F3 that's a car that's red, so he just knows that he's a lap down or more.
Yeah, it depends really how well he's informed of the situation. Now I don't see, regarding the rookie situation, team situation, is that you don't really have Adam State officially entered into any of the teams. However, he is running Satellite Racing liveries in his car, and that might be just an administrative mistake. Regardless, I wonder if he has the information in his ear in any way, shape, or form that, hey, this is to get into the same lap. But then again, I don't think it matters too much. I think it's in both their best interest to not get in each other's way, even if it's to get on the same lap with another driver. Sure, I mean, he would love to hold back Brian Boomsma if possible, but as I just saw out of the commentary window there on the main straight, Brian Boomsma was just easily able to get by Adam State without losing any time at all. And that's the key, really, in multi-class racing. Now, you can be a nuisance, and sometimes it may be worth it to be a nuisance. But most of the time, really, Joey, doing multi-class racing, doing any sort of racing, the fastest way and the best thing you can do is to not cost anyone else any extra time, not be a bit of a prick in that sense, and also not cost yourself any extra time.
The easiest way to think about it is that we're all playing on the same playground, and we got to get along out there because guess what? Next week, we're going to be on the same playground again.
In this case, next month, they're heading off to the Intimidator round. Yeah, but oh man, that is definitely a style of racing where you don't want to make enemies because you can be hung out to dry very easily and wind up in trouble in a way that you don't want to be. So this could be a good place to maybe forge a few good feelings amongst you and your competitors as we watch some of our LMP2s fly into the Le Mans section here with Adam State now being overtaken by some of our LMDHs. Actually, where is Boomsma? Boomsma just got by. So State has now been put on the same lap as Brian Boomsma, your 2 prototype leaders, just a lap apart roughly, and trying to play catch up in the last 23 laps that these drivers have.
It's pretty interesting, Joe, because we actually have all 3 of our class leaders on about the same area of the racetrack, going by start finish all to turn 2.
hop on board now. Looking forward. I believe this is one of our new LMDHs that we're watching, seeing all the downforce that these things produce as they come out of Le Mans corner and onto the long back stretch. That's going to be Luca Harrison, sitting 6th in his class, and he actually is on chase with Sam Swallow in front. That is for position, as he's very brave into the corner, and he's going to pay for it coming off as, boy, he slides wide. Good thing he held on to that. I don't think I'd really want to experience some unfamiliar bumps in this car with how much of a downforce machine this thing is, Ozzy.
No, not at all, and especially exiting Sunset Bend, because wow, it's a doozy. It's a real doozy of a place, as Joey mentioned earlier on. You have to late apex the corner with a high downforce car. Really, that's how I try to do it. When driving here with a Formula car or with a prototype, some people take a more tighter line, really on the inside over the higher of the bumps. But either way, that exit is always a bit of a clenching moment, so to speak. And he was on the right side of clenching on that particular situation. He didn't lose too much time, just fighting it a little bit. It was trying to get away, and you just have to yank the chain and get it back under you. Show the car who's boss. Now, that's all fine and dandy, but when you're doing it in a hybrid LMP machine, LMD hybrid machine, which produces, I don't know how many horsepower, something like 1,000, and it's really a modern prototype aero racing car, it's a lot more difficult than it would be in, let's say, a rally car or one of the older racing cars, where you got a little bit more wiggle room in terms of cornering speeds. Because really, Joey, it's very, very interesting to try and compare the differences between even a GD car and LMP, like prototype car of the modern day. Because as time has gone on, cars have gotten stiffer and stiffer and stiffer, and meanwhile, the knife edge that you have to balance on is getting smaller and smaller and sharper and sharper. So you don't really see drivers going sideways. They don't really hang it loose anymore. In a way that they used to back in the olden days. So when we see it right now, it's even more of a spectacular moment, but sadly, it's no longer something they do to try and go faster. It's usually a result of a mistake.
It can be, and the other thing to add to that is a lot has to do with the tire technology that we see today, is that the tires are much grippier. They don't allow for that yaw angle as much as the older compounds and structures of tires. And then also just the cars, they're much tighter on all of the tolerances. We've just gotten much more exact on what we need to go fast. And to that point as well, the difference in the speeds in GT3 cars versus prototypes, the easiest way to think of a prototype is it really is a big go-kart. You take the bodywork off of this thing and you'd be surprised at how much it looks just like the go-kart is at the go-kart facility, except it's got a huge engine, huge tires, and a big roll cage in there. But compare that to your regular car, that go-kart is going to make speed in so many different areas than a regular production car, and that just helps add to the landscape that is multi-class racing today.
Was able to dig up some information. These machines make up 640 horsepower from what I was able to find. So yeah, they're pretty hefty there, as Jason Wallet is going to continue on behind him. I see Stuart Elderins. I think we're seeing the last pit stops start to take place for some of our drivers. For the LMDHs, that makes sense. LMP2s, they probably need to go maybe about 5 more minutes to get to the end from here.
Now, Joe, remind me a little bit on those LMDH fuel numbers. You say we need to go a little bit more, about 5 minutes to the end, and I know that Brian Boomsma seems like he's starting to work his way up through the LMP2 field, and are we expecting the LMP2s to also pit, or are we stretching it one stop like we see on the GT3 cars?
Well, the LMDH should be able to stop around now, I believe. It's the LMP2s, yeah. That somebody off in the background. Who was that? That is Kyle Murphy, number 10 in the LMDHs. I think he was able to get away with it, but not sure if he had any sort of car contact that put him out there. It did indeed, yeah. He got hit by Marco Silva in the 970 and just sent him flying. But no, the LMP2's about 35 to 40 minutes if you're really pushing the fuel here. And we've got about 42 minutes left, roughly, what I'm seeing. So they've got, they need to go just a little bit longer, I think, to be able to make it on one stop from here.
I got you. Yeah, no, it helps just paint the picture of what we're seeing out on the racetrack, and these prototypes going through the hairpin one more time. Get the beautiful shot of Chateau Elan in the background there.
It's not your favorite Chateau d'Eau?
No, I can actually pronounce this one.
Exactly. As Matt Odell leads David Gargaro. Now, that's not for position for Odell. He's a lap down from them. And but Gargaro and Guest are for position. So this is proving to be a bit of a strange situation here, because Odell's not giving way, and he doesn't have to. He's getting blue flags, but that's informational only. There's a good example of what I described earlier. Mark Heron squeezed himself between those prototypes exactly with the car's width.
Yeah, yep, and it's one of those situations where you just kind of clench and grit your teeth and hope that you're able to make it. Gargaro, really great reflexes, by the way. David Gargaro Jr., car number 42, currently in 25th place overall. He was able to really save that one, where he thought that Heron was going to leave the door open, and he wasn't. And he wasn't about to cut in, but he did cut in, Heron that is, and well calculated by Gargano in order to avoid a major accident there. Meanwhile, fastest lap of the race, it got updated for the first time after a while, and that's because the track temp is slowly but surely going down. Mind you, this is a great point to remind you all that we are running on 4 times simulated time speed, so the day is going by 4 times faster than usual, which is usually what happens when you hit 30 years old. So
this is getting intense out here on track. Guest managed to go by Gargaro as we were watching on screen, but it's becoming a bit of a traffic jam now, as he's going to have to try and pick a side for Sam Swallow to overtake and then get back to the racing line. Looks like he managed that well.
And I could be wrong here, Joe, but I think just based off of what I'm seeing in timing and scoring, some of the back of the pack in each class is maybe a lap or 2 down, but it seems like the hybrids are starting to get up into the LMP2 field, and then the front of the LMP2 is starting to get up into... Oh, big accident!
Wow. And that's a spot with no tires up against the wall, just straight concrete. Surely that had to do massive damage.
I know we'll get a replay of exactly what happened here, but so you see he's got to get it turned around. He can't go backwards too much, or else you'll actually get a black flag here, and you see just the heavy damage is making it difficult.
Yeah, that's a hard one to swallow.
Yep, Sam Swallow, who had that incident and taken a long time. He does have a black and orange flag. He's going to have to come in and take that spare car. Actually, let me double check. I'm pretty sure he should still have it. No, he's already used it. Sam Swallow is going to be out of this race effectively. He is done.
Really, really unfortunate there. You see the left rear tire, just heavy damage, heavy tow. You're right. It's going to be day over.
Oh, and we got another NRG car as well, spinning in the background, just on the live shot there. You saw it very, very briefly. That's one of the teammates, actually, and that's Stuart Elder spinning out car number 115, heading on to the Big Bend. So that's really, really unfortunate. And that's 2 teammates within the space of half lap having to take it to the pit lane.
Oh,
and that's a weird one, because I don't think he had any damage either. He spun out. He may have slightly tapped the wall. Yeah, slight impact to the front of the car at something like 20 miles an hour. And he just wasn't able to get it back going once again. And trying to reverse, and realizing that, nope, that's a fruitless effort. Gonna have to take a tow back to the pit lane.
just was all for naught in the end. So you have to be diligent all the way to the finish of this race, because anything can happen at any moment. In fact, last night we did see drivers wreck with just laps to go and didn't get to see the checkered flag. So it's still all to play for at every moment on the circuit as you watch them weave into Tower Corner and out towards Bishop once more. Chasing on Marcus Neighbor, Wasilewski.
Boomsma, sorry, number 1. Brian Boomsma around in turn number 1, losing a bit of time, trying to get back going. There was a slight contact with Nuno Costa, and guess what? Brian Boomsma, another Energy Racing car. Are they cursed?
Apparently. And this is going to be important because that's the lead of the LMDH cars.
Yeah.
So if he was on course to be close to Waring, that means that now he's behind. So again, we don't know the picture quite yet. We need just a few more laps to try and figure that one out. And it could come down to being right on the last couple corners.
Yeah, and it was slight impact, so he went for a half spin, lost a lot of tire wear, I'm guessing, because he went essentially sideways through turn number 1 to a complete halt and then back going again, lost maybe 3, 4, 5 seconds. But if last night is of any indication, Joe, it could be those very few seconds, as we are seeing a replay here of what happened to him. It could be those few seconds that cost him the race victory. And I tell you what, he was really fortunate that that wasn't essentially a plane crash, because usually there are no small crashes in turn 1 at Sebring.
Yeah, absolutely. It does have all that paved runoff out there up to the wall, but like you said, it's such high speeds. He locked it up right almost immediately. It looked like he slammed the brakes to get that car to try and slow down, and eventually it did before things got worse. And meanwhile, this is Gregaro with Guest just in front of him. They've been glued together. Tyler Maxson actually just passed them for position. He's in a different class. And Guest is pitting. So here we see some of our LMP2s taking their final stop now.
And to that point, I had been watching Ryan Wasilewski, and he had made his way up into the 3rd spot. I know we're checking out this GT3 battle. To that point, Joe, Ryan Wash has already made the pit stop. He's on his first stint on this final fuel stint.
Okay, so Wash, one of those that has got himself good to go to the end, one of the early ones. And we also don't know what's going to happen. Speak of the devil, I was just going to say, don't know what's going to happen with our GT3 drivers. Dick Mueller is in pit lane, and I think this one is scheduled. So he's going to take a 2-stop strategy. Meanwhile, watching Waring in Pataska. Waring still doing exactly what he needs to do to save the fuel, or Pataska doing what he needs to do to save the fuel behind Waring up to this stage, just riding behind him and not losing touch with him. So when he does need to turn up the wick, he can go on the attack if need be.
It was about a handful of laps ago, Joe, that Andrew Waring started to pick up the pace again. And let me tell you, Dallas Pataska has not let go one bit. This continues to be the class of the field with these 2 drivers in GT3 right now. But if you ask me, it seems like Andrew Waring has the upper hand right now, and the track position, which is always tough to overcome.
Yeah, not impossible to pass here, but it's always nice to be able to play the defense instead of having to be the attacker, as they just were overtaken by Soranzo. Now with 17 laps to go. The incredible pace they've been running have put them 31 seconds ahead of Kevin Hill. Oh, and Kevin Hill is actually pitting. Okay. Did we know that he was? I thought that he was one of those that went long, but I guess not.
No. He was early.
Okay. So my memory's going bad. Anyways, they carry on, as that's going to stretch that gap. Now it's Medina who is in second place, 34 seconds behind them. Still, that's a pretty wide margin between them as we jump on board with Dallas Pataska. A few other cars just going past them. Do they have any other prototypes? Yeah, they got a couple more that are approaching them, including Wash, who's got that number 86 into 5th in the LMP2s right now. Should inherit a few more once we see Black. Shelley needs to take a stop. No, Shelley is in his stop. And then Adam State needs to. State had at least a decent gap before. So I think State should be in a good state, actually.
You notice the sun going down here in the sim. Look at this visual cue going down into turn 17. You can't see anything with the sun that low on the horizon. And not only is it tough to deal with as a racer, but your performance in the PC gets tough to deal with. The shadows start getting frame hits. There's a lot of things going on the racetrack right now that are changing.
Yeah, with that 4x time, though, thankfully they have fewer laps where that sun is right in their eyes, and they'll be able to get into the nighttime. But you and I were talking about night racing earlier today, Joey. We're going to see who is good in all conditions and who is not, because some really thrive in the dark and others don't.
It's just one more variable, and I think that vision plays a huge part in racing, obviously, but people get nervous when they don't get their regular visual cues. However, nothing has changed on the racetrack. If you can still carry that same confidence of, I know this racetrack and I know my markers, nothing happens but getting faster. And actually, Pataska's got a really good run on Andrew Waring. Andrew Waring got pushed out wide in the turn 7 hairpin due to some prototypes, and Pataska might be looking down the inside, going down here into this heavy braking zone. This is a pass for the GT3 lead. Dallas Pataska to the point.
Has this been where he makes his move? Is he going to absolutely scamper away from Waring, or are they close on pace? They are going to get split by Edward Shelley briefly. That's our 5th place driver in the LMP2s, and then he leaves them be. Waring will get a nice pull here through Bishop and as well along the Ullman Straight, so that'll help him ride those coattails for now. But the next lap or two, Ozzy, is going to be very telling.
Absolutely, and it's a good thing Edward Shelley didn't send it up to the inside on Tower corner. He was looking at it. He was looking at the inside line on Dallas Pataska, then realized that no, I'm not going to go there yet. I'm going to get him on the exit instead, and it's a good thing he did. But Andrew Waring, just look at the draft he's able to utilize right now on that Ullman Straight. Coming out of the last corner, this is where the Audi should be theoretically a little bit stronger. You can see how wide Pataska is taking that last corner. Of course you have to, but he's leaving no margin at all, despite there still being 15 laps to go. And now what I'm really curious is that, has the horn of battle been sounded? Is it now on between these two, Pataska and Waring? Theoretically, they should be good on fuel, both of them, from here on out. They shouldn't be having to save too much from this point onwards. So it's a straight fight to the finish. Now, these guys have been next to each other, in front or behind each other, near each other, less than a second away, throughout the course of this race. For the whole 2 hours or 1.5 hours so far, they've been right there in the mix for the GT lead and for the overall lead as well. They have a lot of information on one another. Andrew Waring has a lot of information on how Dallas Pataska is driving, where that Beamer is strong, where that Beamer is weak, where Dallas is strong, where Dallas is weak. And likewise, Dallas has that same information about Andrew Waring. So they know each other, they've had time to study each other, as they have time to study the blade. And now it's time to put that into good use and see who is gonna come out on top here at Major Series. And Joe, actually I'm gonna throw it to Joey, Mr. Atterbury, because it's Sebring, you got GD cars, you have a fight for the class win, potentially the overall win. It's the golden hour. It does not get any better than this. Well, actually, pass me an ice cream, then it would.
Well, and something else, the sun is going down, the golden hour is happening, and one thing that I'm seeing on the racetrack is I'm seeing purple sectors pop up more and more. Fast laps are being set, and that just means the temperature is dropping and things are getting fast on the racetrack. And when things get fast, let me tell you, congestion happens, and more often than not, here we got another battle for this GT3 lead. Looks like Waring's got to run. It's not going to do anything with it here in turn 1. Doesn't quite have the opportunity, or maybe isn't quite strong enough in turn 1 in that Audi.
Well, what does he want to do in this situation? Because if he fights hard, They're going to be cost time. State and Boomsma will catch them quicker, but he can't just concede the lead. He has to feel very confident, I got to think, about his passes when he makes it, if he attempts any, but he is holding on to the back of Pataska, at least for the time being. They still have about half a lap back to Adams State right now. And State actually did take his stop this last time by, so he lost some of that time getting his fuel to go to the end, but we're well within the range to get to the finish, so no fuel concerns for the 118 from here, Ozzy.
Not at all, and that is of course good news to hear. One less thing to you have to worry about, really, in the context of racing. Adams State should be in a good condition from here on out. Has also been able to extend that lead back a little bit. It went all the way down to 2.5 seconds from the 5 seconds it was in, but now he's back around 5 seconds ahead of the second place driver in that class, who is Eric Dalla Riva, of course. They beat the first and second pretty much throughout the course of this race. Ever since the great calamity that faced the prototypes from the start of this race, and sparing a thought, by the way, for all the race stewards out there. Of course, Michael doing a great job with the major series, all the race stewards watching there in the tower, when they realize that the timing is going to work out so that both the prototype classes are essentially going to get sent right into the field at the early goings of the race. Because you just know that it's going to be an interesting affair, which it turned out to be. But I can just imagine the faces in the stewarding tower at that point.
Yeah, no doubt. And the faces on the drivers as they realize what's about to happen with them emerging. Waring's been getting close to Pataska again, but hasn't made a move. In fact, I thought he had a chance to, but I guess he felt otherwise because he didn't even show himself in the mirrors as we were watching this here coming through Bishop between Luca Harrison and David Soranzo. This is amongst fifth in the hybrids, but now we need to start taking into consideration overall position. This is 28th that they are fighting for. A number of the LMP2s have been overtaken by the hybrids.
This is that final crossover point where we have almost all of the classes on the same lap. I see the GT3 leader still on lap 40. And here, actually, we've got a pass for the lead. Andrew Waring taking a look down the inside of where Pataska actually made the move on him. And the number 3 Audi back out front.
Made it stick. Wow, that kind of came out of nowhere. It didn't look like a particularly bad corner from Pataska, and Waring just pounced on him, caught him napping, and we're down to 13 laps to go here now.
And you know what? That's absolutely genius. Joey, I'm gonna let you finish, but let me say this first, because Andrew Waring, when he came down to the hairpin, he went on the brakes early, very early, and then kind of was already focusing on getting a good exit of that corner. So he was kind of like chuking out Dallas Pataska, took a very good exit out of the hairpin and was able to get that run into turn number 10, into Cunningham Corner as a result of that, using the advantage of the Audi, those good exit speeds, and really making that move stick. But I think if he had that on the back burner the whole time, Joey, he may have done it a little bit too early.
I think that, now I could be wrong in this, guys. I think that Andrew Waring is running a slightly higher downforce setup in comparison to Dallas Pataska, and he can take advantage much more through the infield sections while he struggles on the straightaway. And I think, Joe, that's why we saw he didn't get a great run, but he was just able to hang in the slipstream long enough to make that move.
It's good observation, that one. Yeah, it might be exactly the case. We sometimes forget this is open setup, and there can be advantages found depending on how you want to drive the car. Boomsma, man, this is not good news for everybody else. He's been racing all alone for some time here. He's found a wide swath of racetrack with nobody around, so he's been able to maximize everything through what is, I think, about the last lap or so here. And coming up to another car of Jeroen Kaiser to lap him. He's trying to get up to Edward Shelley. Boomsma has taken his pit stop, by the way, so he's good to go to the finish. He's still on the same lap as Adam State, our LMP2 leader, but has to regain a bunch of ground from here.
And I'm speculating here, Joe, purely speculating. 12 laps left. LMP2s are making their way up through GT3s. Hybrids are making their way up through LMP2, but if I was a betting man and I'm going to put some money down, I actually think the GT3s are looking in an okay spot right now.
It certainly has been looking like that for much of the race. I'm trying to get my calculator out and do a few calculations to see what it's going to look like once we get to 10 laps to go. How far behind some of these classes need to be able to catch up to them in the end as we watch. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, well, Joey, to answer your question, what I figured out earlier on in this race is that the lap time difference is roughly 15 seconds on average between the hybrids and the... Oh, and there's a spinner in the background. Actually, 2 cars spinning on the background. Let's go to that right now and figure that out later on. Morris Gomillion 044 car has been around, as has been Eric Dalla Riva from the second place in the LMP2 class. Car 991 has had a 911 moment in the corner heading onto the in the last of the Le Mans complex corners, heading onto the Alman Straight, and Nathan Medina has been involved in that one as well. So there's been a big situation, and as a result of that, Dalla Riva has lost a lot of time, and that's really going to hand out the advantage in the LMP2 class more firmly to the hands of Adam State.
I was able to get the calculator out, and 10 laps to go works out to about 2.5 minutes. That a 15-second gap would put them right together at the line. Right now, Adam State is, I think, about 1.5 laps behind. So that works out just about right, because if it's just around 2 minutes per lap or just under that, then Adam State's going to barely catch them towards the end. I think the organizers have got this one spot on once again.
And judging on where they are off a track right now, granted, I'm eyeballing this. You're right, Joe. The LMP2 and the GT3 leads are going to be pretty much right on top of each other given 11 laps to go.
Oh, man, this is going to be intense. State just... Oh, no, State's had a problem. State has wrecked. He's off the course. No, it's excuse me, it's Belval. I clicked on the wrong car. He had just been passed by Adam State. My goodness. They must have switched positions. I double-clicked on him, and then I saw a car that was stopped standstill. Belval, who was in 9th overall, has had a major wreck, so he's now trying to crawl back to the pits. But that does bump Adam State into 10th position overall. He still hasn't moved on to the lead lap, though. Let's take a look at the replay.
So this is the situation that happened earlier, heading onto the back straight that I mentioned earlier. Yeah, just so unfortunate. Medina hitting, and that's Dalla Riva going around, and earlier on, just really one of those were GT3s on the inside, you know, kind of minding his own thing, Joey, and the prototypes are on the outside, and you just slide a little bit wide, bumper hook, and in a prototype, when you hit that bumper, when you hit anything really with another car, it's already on the edge of the grip in that corner, on the exit of the corner, and even the slightest contact is going to result in a spin, and it's a really clumsy situation. It's a really something that should be avoided, could be avoided, but really minor mistake that leads to big drama. Thankfully, no major damage there.
Yeah, thankfully no major damage. And an interesting something I'm seeing, Joe, is actually Nathan Medina in the GT3 class just came down and took a final stop. You're right, it seems like some of these GT3 cars are going to have to do that 2-stop strategy.
He did, and he's back out, so he should be good to go. He's still sitting in 4th, though. That's not a bad position. Unfortunately, it's a minute 25 behind Warren. Man, that pace of those leaders has been unbelievable. Actually, if we don't have them on screen right now, but Warren is leading Pataska by 2.5 seconds. Did we notice when that stretched out?
It's been going on for the last handful of laps. Andrew Waring used the benefit of traffic a few laps ago to stretch it out a little bit, and then he's just been consistently about 1 to 2 tenths faster than Dallas Pataska per lap.
Watching off the corner as Luca Harrison behind Soranzo tries to see if he can take 4th in class. This is for 24th overall, though. And quickly catching up to Jeff Schmeier, one of the LMP2s in front of them. Going to be difficult for him to hold them behind for much longer. Adam State just moved into 7th now. He passed Heron up on the track. It's getting ever closer, and he is about a lap away from getting onto the lead lap. He can now see Waring way up ahead.
You're right, that is our GT3 leader that's just going into this complex right in front of him. Got to be careful because here comes more hybrids up through, and 3 different classes of car all on one of the busiest sections of the racetrack, the Tower Turn right here, this right-hander.
That's Adam State directly in front of us, actually, as we ride on with Harrison. So Harrison should be able to overtake him, but he's trying to get a lap back from this LMP2 leader, so that's not for position. State still is the highest car. Oh no, did Waring have an issue? I think with Soranzo.
It was Soranzo just went way too deep. He's going to get a slowdown, no contact between the cars.
Ooh, well that's a big relief. That still costs him time, unfortunately, but I was afraid that we'd see the leader get damaged just like last night once again. State's there now. He's about to take the position here soon, as we're watching just ahead of him on board with the car of Harrison, still trying to attack on Soranzo, but unfortunately not able to make that spot. Now that actually is going to be a bit of a headache if you're Adam State and those 2 cars are battling for position.
Joe, when is there not a headache out here at Sebring when there's 3 classes on the racetrack?
Good point. Well, maybe more than usual, I would say, for poor Adam State. And this thing is getting intense here. He's really got to be wary. I think not just because of time lost, but if those 2 get tangled with one another, he doesn't want to be collected in that.
Especially, you've turned off the lights here at the racetrack now. Everybody's racing in the dark. Things are just as busy, and you got to keep your head, we say on a swivel, but you really have to be careful of slower traffic in front of you, as well as faster traffic potentially behind you.
Speaking of faster traffic behind you, is it just me or is Boomsma way behind Waring here? Ozzy, I know you're kind of taking a look at that. Is it looking like he's not got a shot at this one the way it sits currently?
Yeah, I don't think he has, because when I started the stopwatch, when we had Waring with 10 to go, started the stopwatch out, and then waited for those guys to come by. Well, Adam State looks to be closer. He's exactly 1 lap, 1 minute 57 behind the leader. However, Brian Boomsma, 2 minutes 46 seconds, and the time is running out. So that's something that's, I don't think that's going to be enough, honestly, not unless Waring has to take an extra pit stop or there is some drama. But right now it looks to be a straight fight between Andrew Waring, potentially Dallas Pataska, as well as Adam State, who has just made his way to 6th place overall.
Indeed, State on that lead lap now that he's overtaken. A few other cars are starting to dive through for position. I see Dalla-Riva is up to 9th, Wasilewski up to the top 10. Still watching this battle between Harrison and Soranzo for 22nd or 23rd and 24th rather, and they're coming up to Kevin Hill. That's 5th place in class. Whoa, as the Harrison just went off track and he is now out of the battle.
Gonna have to get a slowdown from that, but better to keep it on the stuff than spin it around. And something to report on in GT3, we might actually have a race for the lead coming down to the checkered flag. Dallas Pataska just set the fastest lap of the race at 1 minute 58.7.
And they're 1 minute 12 seconds ahead of Ryan Walker. They're essentially more than half a lap ahead of the nearest GT3 car. That is just unbelievable pace out there, which means if you're Adam State, you're not passing for position once you passed Ryan Walker for quite some time and trying to hustle your way up to the top 2. And if you get one of them, you're probably going to get both of them. So this is now becoming an all or nothing situation for the 118 cars. There we watch Pataska, who's dropped off once again. Was there another error in this part of the lap?
I just think, Joe, is that whenever Pataska makes inroads, Waring has an answer for it. So we come up with something, and then Andrew Waring's like, nope, I got it, no big deal, watch this.
Watch this. Like, usually, it's one of those things. Two things you don't want to hear going into a race. The first is, I'm just here for SR, which they never are, and or unless it's like serious racing or something like that. And another thing you never want to hear on a driver chat is, watch this.
Well, I mean,
Go ahead, Joe.
Well, I was going to say, you know the most common final words of a redneck, right? Watch this. You know what the second most common words are? Well, I can do that.
It reminds me of that position of that situation in the GD lead and overall lead, where Waring and Pataska have been pretty much like, anything you can do, I can do better all race long, and now it looks like Waring just has the advantage at this point in time. But anything can still happen because darkness has fallen on Sebring International Raceway. And while that may not be necessarily making things too much more difficult, because these cars still have headlights and they can flash those headlights, it's still gonna make spotting those braking points a little bit more difficult, Joey. You mentioned that during the golden hour, but even more so now that it's dark. Sometimes you have cones, but sometimes you just have to kind of guess it, as we have a great battle on screen as well.
Yeah, Mickey able to overtake on Soranzo there, and that's going to be for the 23rd position, fourth amongst their class cars. But as we've seen, the LMDHs just didn't seem to have the pace today. They got a lot to make up here at the very end, and quite little time to do it. Man, this battle just keeps going. Mickey having to go defensive on David down into turn 3, and he'll deny him once again. State, by the way, we saw on screen, took 4th position away from Medina.
It's getting busy now that the laps are coming to a close here. Working 6 laps to go at Sebring. Who's going to take home the overall victory? Is it going to be GT3? Is it going to be LMP2? Or are we going to see Brian Boomsma somehow pull out a miracle in that hybrid car?
Well, 15 seconds a lap. Again, that's going to be about a minute difference for 4 laps. And they're on 5 to go. It's 1:21. Adam's going to have to really go quick here for this last bit to catch up to them.
I know that Ozzy is furiously working the stopwatch behind the scenes, and he's trying to compare all the different classes. I think it's really going to come down to that start-finish line, or maybe even at least that back straightaway headed down towards turn 17. And Joe, if you ask me, I don't want to be a GT3 car on that back straightaway if I see prototype headlights.
Indeed, you're going to have to watch that F3 box very closely to understand the situation. Remember, they can defend, and we saw that last night with Christian versus Hinz. He held the inside on the last corner, but the downforce of the prototype was too much to overcome. Boomsma just moved into 9th position, so he's within the top 10 from here, and he's on the lead lap now.
Will be interesting to see his work up through the GT3 field. And I want to report back on Andrew Waring. We were saying everything you can do, I can do better. Well, as soon as Dallas Pataska set that fast lap, Andrew Waring reset the fast lap, so he is the fastest car on the racetrack in terms of GT3.
Pushing hard. It's up to 2.8 seconds. I think Pataska has been dropped at this stage. Waring, if he was saving the fuel, there are no concerns for that now. And coming around that last corner, this is Wasilewski versus Dallariva. This is for 7th position currently, but quickly catching up to Kevin Hill in front of him.
I could be wrong, but this is a huge run for Ryan Wasilewski in that satellite car. If I remember correctly, he was some 5 or even 10 seconds behind the 991 machine that's right now in front of him by only half a second.
Oh, but that's Boomsma. that's going by. And we're on board with him right now, so Boomsma takes the spot from Wasilewski. That's 8th place for him now.
And look at the way Wasilewski took that exit out of the hairpin. Well, we didn't see it quite on the screens because we were watching Boomsma, but Wasilewski took a great exit out of the hairpin, however, not quite able to make it work because Boomsma got past Dallariva before the corner, so really no time lost for Dallariva. But you're right, that is a huge run. Part of it, Joey, is of course the situation we saw earlier on when Dallariva went around heading onto the back straight, but you're right, it's also been a great comeback from Wasilewski, who now has to work around the outside of many cars, as we saw Dallariva thread a needle from the middle, and Wasilewski is able to stay right in the mix. This is for 2nd place in your LMP2 class, and they are getting closer and closer at the final minutes of this race. I will have to say this though, apparently I've been working the numbers and the Excel sheets and the calculators and whatnot, all those things that the commentators shouldn't do, which is maths. And I have to say the overall fight really is right now between Andrew Waring and Dallas Pataska. I think we can call it now. I wouldn't say sadly, because those guys have been great all race long, but I don't think Adam State has enough to make it, not with only 4 laps to go.
Yeah, I would not really bet on the 118. Over a minute left here, and he's up to 3rd position, so we've got the most accurate reading up to this point. And Warren and Pataska just took the 3 laps to go, so it's even less than that. I'm sure Adam's still hustling. Boomsma, oh no, Boomsma off! Boomsma for sure this time. I got the right car. The number 1 just got punted in the hairpin, and what was valuable positions, valuable time here, he sees slip through his fingers and he's sent back down to 8th.
I'm going to interject here. He wasn't punted. Brian Boomsma locked up the back end going into turn 7. That was a self-spin that he was trying to get underneath the GT3 car because he knows he's running out of time.
Wow. So like we said, it gets a little bit tense at the end when you finally have an idea of where you sit. And maybe a few questionable moves will start to unfold as drivers try to desperately make up position after position, finally seeing themselves overtake cars outside of their class for overall spots. It is down to about 54 seconds to the lead for Adams State as we have a replay of what happened to Boomsma.
Now, if I recall here, he's going to come down hard into turn 7, snap around on him, rear lockup.
And that is such a bad feeling as a driver when you come into the braking zone, and it happens so easily with the prototypes because you can come into the braking zone later and later and later. Your car is getting lighter and lighter and lighter. You feel the grip increase each and every time you come into the braking zone because of the cooler track, and then you just push it a little bit too far. And meanwhile, on the 2nd place, we have Wasilewski, who is now past Dallariva on the 2nd place, with Shelley 7 seconds behind. So Wasilewski now, his comeback it's not quite complete. Adam State is still leading this race by a landslide, in this class at least. But hey, Joey, you know, from one prototype having a bit of a self-spin and losing it on the braking zone to the hairpin to another prototype who has really been the story of the last half an hour.
I think really the story of the whole race, because Ryan Wash had damage early on and he fought his way back up to 3rd place and then fixed that damage in the pit stop, which means he fell back down the order, and now he's crawled all the way back up to what is 4th place overall, 2nd place in the LMP2 cars.
All right, so 2 to go, and they're already at the hairpin is our leaders. Pataska in 2nd with Adams State 44 seconds behind. That's just a little bit too much to ask. Boomsma trying to get past Ryan Wasilewski here, and Wash is going to chop him off, but 2 more laps to go. He's certainly not going to be able to hold back a faster class machine. Up into 4th goes the number 1. 30 seconds to catch up to Adams State. I think that's unlikely. We'll see him move higher than this.
Agreed. I think that's as high as Ryan Wasilewski is going to get, as We see here, this is Brian Boomsma, the hybrid leader, going across the start-finish line. He still has a full 2 laps to go, while in comparison to the GT3 leader, I'm looking, he's already around turn 16.
Yeah, this is down to it now as Warling will get the white flag coming around the final corner. And you can see Boomsma just picking his way past now lapped cars. He's not going to see anybody in his windscreen that'll give him a position from here. Waring around the final corner. He is now taking the white flag. All he has to do is be clean to the finish.
What's that on the screen? That's Boomsma, who may have lost. He lost the class lead to Maxon.
We had another bit of drama.
And he spun again. He spun again into Cunningham.
Oh, so what did he? Or no, David Baker had an accident, I think.
Yeah, but Boomsma was caught up in that one and lost the class lead to Maxon. The hybrid class lead to Maxon. We saw it on the screen as we are watching the race leader. Let's go back to that later, Joe. Overall, but also Boomsma out of P1 in the last lap.
So, looks like Wasilewski down to 6 now, and Boomsma trying to catch him back up. It is all falling apart for that number 1. Maxon sticking with it. Been fantastic here today and managing to avoid all sorts of problems. I do believe that Waring is coming through Collier. There he is right now. That's Silva just in front of him. And looks like it's about 3.8 seconds back to Pataska. He is well clear. Just turned up the wick exactly when he needed to do it. Has put this one under control. State still 25 seconds behind, even second place at this stage. Third, probably the highest you're going to see from that 118 car. So Andrew Waring, who started this one from pole, has led for a good chunk of the race, managed his fuel well to do it on a single stop, brings it up to the final corner here at Sunset Bend. No such dramas in the Atlantic region at the final turn. Andrew Waring probably cheering inside that cockpit as he is going to take the opening salvo, winning at the 2 hours of Sebring.
Really impressive run from start to finish for Andrew Waring. Pole, fastest lap, and the checkered flag today for him in GT3, as this is Adam State in your LMP2 class, 3rd overall, rounding out a turn 17 for the first time, taken to the fireworks.
As those
and 10
go
behind
off.
Them, 10 behind them, we are still waiting on Boomsma and a couple of other guys as well. Wasilewski actually lost that position to Boomsma once again, so Boomsma has passed Wasilewski on the last lap, and you can see them here. It was really tight. Ross Banfield as well, he's laps down, but he is also in the pictures at least. A lot of drama for Brian Boomsma, who was holding on to that hybrid class victory all the way throughout the race, up until the penultimate lap when he lost it on the hairpin, and I'm sure we'll see that one later on. But it's gonna be Tyler Maxon taking the hybrid class win, which doesn't mean anything really, but he was 4th overall, and then it's gonna be Brian Boomsma 5th and Ryan Wasilewski ending up 6th. A lot of drama late on in this race. Wowee!
And credit to Waring and Pataska, because the next one down, in fact, the only other GT3 car on the lead lap was Kevin Hill, 3rd of those GT3s. And the last one to take the finish here is things tight to the line for some of our LMDHs. That was Vrosky going by. That wasn't for position, I don't believe, but just trying to hustle his way to the line to take 9th. So we are going to take a quick break. We'll come back with the unofficial results as well as driver interviews, so stick around.
Note for safety reasons, all fuel drums and high-pressure bottles are to be stored at the rear of the pit. Thank you.
Welcome back to Sebring. It was a wild one here, and you kind of expect that with the Predator style racing, but it was the ending that really caught our attention, made us sit up and notice, because poor Boomsma, who was the fastest of the LMDHs for most of the race, wound up getting tangled up. Joey, you've had a better look at things. Why don't you talk us through this replay?
It all culminated in the final couple laps here between all three of the classes. We see Brian Boomsma get checked up by this Audi here, and unfortunately, Mr. Guest gets into the back of Boomsma, which turns him around just a little bit. You see Tyler Maxson scoot away in the hybrid lead, and then unfortunately here, more contact between Boomsma and Ryan Wasilewski turns Brian Boomsma around. And let me tell you, this wasn't it for Brian Boomsma. He actually gets on the racetrack right here, and this Ferrari that's right in front of him decides to get a little loose and hook it right across the racetrack. So Brian Boomsma, in the corner, or a span of about 4 turns, had more going on than most people did all race.
Wow. I'm sure he's super frustrated, but I mean, that's just the way the cookie crumbles sometimes in racing. You can't control everything. And our results sees Andrew Waring take the overall win. Dallas Pataska second behind him. Adam State, the first of the LMP2s, finished in third. Tyler Maxson, first of the LMDHs, finishes fourth. You've got Boomsma in fifth in the end. Edward Shelley, P6. Ryan Wasilewski, seventh. And Eric Dallariva in eighth. Trevor Vrosky managed to finish ninth and only third of the GT3s, but 10th overall. Last on the lead lap, Aussie Kevin Hill rounds out our first slide.
Indeed, and when you get to the second page where we have Sharon Kaiser in 11th, Eric Mikke in 12th, Ryan Walker in 13th, Mark Heron 14th, and Sasha Black finishing 15th. You got Luca Harrison in 16th, Dick Muller 17th, Jeff Schmeier 18th, David Soranzo 19th, and Tom Guest rounding out your top 20, Joey.
Yes, and then we have Håkan Schodt there in the 21st spot in that GT3 car. Ross Banfield, the 22nd overall, Nathan Medina, Manuel Polanco, Hans Blankart, David Gargaro Jr., David Baker, Claude Belville that we saw there in that replay just recently, Marco Silva, and Spencer Todd rounding out the top 30, Joe.
Felipe Pizzotto was 31st, Gerard Gilbert 32nd. Then you get into cars 2 laps down. Nick Horvath 33rd, as Marcus Naber was 34th. Gary Thomas P35 and Jason Wallet in 36. Kyle Murphy was 37th today. You get Stefan Bequy in 38th. 39th goes to Gomillion, and Cardamone finishes 40 today. Ozzy.
Yes, Audio Aussie. Matt Odell finishing 41st, then you got Kenneth Reeder in 42nd, Nuno Costa 43rd, and then it's going to be your list of retired drivers, more or less. Daniel Davis 44th, Sam Swallow, Stuart Elder, Travis Henderson, Joseph Holman, David Nichols, Ozzy Milvain among the unfortunate, and then we go to the next slide where we're going to see rest of your drivers who did not make it across the finish line today. Roy Maas, Robert Cowie, Patrick Kopp, Mike Golightly, and Jan Brownie, ending up 55th in this 55-driver field here on the opening round of the Major Series. And really, what a race! What can we say, Joe? It's been quite an event to watch. Didn't let us down.
Not at all. And Andrew Waring took the win over all of them. Let's have a chat with him to see how he felt about that race, because certainly some things that I think we'd love to know about the fuel strategy and whatnot up to this point as we wait for Waring to join us here. There we go. We've got Andrew with us in the booth. Andrew, it looked like you had control there at the end but how much in control were you through the rest of the race with Pataska running so close to you? Did you know that you could outrun him there towards the end of the race?
Well, first of all, he ran a great race himself. I kind of figured him and I would target the same idea after what we saw yesterday. The race being 60 laps meant it pretty much had to be a one-stop, or you had to rely on the luck of the LMP2s or LMDHs to run into some luck, which I'm not too keen on relying on that kind of luck. So I kind of figured when Dallas got by me the first stint, he was definitely saving because I wasn't catching him and I was saving. So from there, I kind of knew we were on the same strategy. And to a point, there's no reason to battle each other because in a way we're working together to win overall and not let these other classes get us. So once him and I got in a routine and a rhythm, around lap 15, I still kind of thought, he had the pace because that BMW looked really good, but the Audis kept getting better as the track went down. And I mean, the track started at 110 and finished at 83. So the cars went through a lot of different characteristics in driving. And I think I might have just had the car a little bit more set up for the dark, because once the dark came out and the track got cool, I just found myself rolling even more and more. And, fuel was never really an issue in that second stint. So just tried to keep out of traffic. I think everybody overall did a really good race, really good job managing all those cars coming through. So pretty good way to start the season for me. Very good, very happy.
And from what I understand, this is your 7th ever majors win. Not many managed to make it up that high, so quite the achievement. But talking about the race, this is one of those weird ones where you really kind of don't know where you sit until it's pretty close to the end. Did you have anybody in the background that was feeding you information about what was going on with the other classes working their way through, or were you truly kind of blind up till those last laps?
Yeah, pretty much blind. I mean, we are all in a group Discord channel together, like the whole Evolve team, and I was getting a little bit of feedback of, oh, he's here, somebody's here, or Brian was running into some trouble. But for the most part, unfortunately, my JRT also broke this morning, so I was using the in-car fuel consumption number and then the black box to calculate it. And, judging from where Kevin and Nathan and Nick and, a couple of the other teammates were at, I knew I was doing a decent enough job. I was definitely worried when I saw Pataska go another lap, because kind of figured that would make him able to push flat out the whole second stint. But, it just worked out, and it's one of those things where, I think a lot of people adjusted their strategy after watching the race yesterday. I know I did, and I think it was just about who could adapt and, be the most cautious under the faster cars approaching you and whatnot and trying to get into trouble. And I think that's really what won the race today. Is Dallas and I both really kept out of trouble for the majority of the race.
Yeah, and that paid huge dividends. But a lot of changes this season for the majors as well. Not just the kind of some of the formats that some are being brought back, some are being introduced, but you've also now got the condensed regions down to just 2 here. Does that concern you at all, or are you surprised that you were able to have this sort of good race to start things off? Because this also means that so much talent has been compressed into fewer series.
Absolutely. I mean, the talent pool in this series was already huge. Racing America's last year for the last 3 years against Christian was, and a bunch of those guys is just kind of, set the tone for where I need to be. And I knew as soon as I saw Dallas and me in the same class, it's going to be the exact same. It's not going to be any easier. It's going to be just as hard. So I expect, the whole season to just be, multiple drivers, multiple division, like multiple race winners. And it's going to be a really tough, long season. A lot of drivers ran into some bad luck with this format, which, I'm still not sold on it being the first round of a year-long series, being this kind of, chase fun style race. And I think I got pretty lucky in this round, but I'm looking forward to more conventional major series races like Daytona 500 next year. And I know for sure there's going to be a ton of guys in this division that are going to be all over the front of the pack. So I think you guys are in for a really good treat to watch this year. And I think as a driver, I'm in for a great battle with a lot of these guys that I'm looking forward to.
I think it says something when you say that the Predator format, or imply that the Predator format is more chaotic than a super speedway race. So that tells
Wow.
you something.
Yeah. let's not mention Daytona yet, because I mean, there's going to be 100 guys in this this time zone trying to get into the top 43. So even the top 43 guys are all going to be, or drivers are all going to be on top of each other. So who knows what happens there? But you know, I'm over the moon to start the 2023 season like this, and I just hope I can keep it up and the team can keep it up.
Well, best of luck to you. Great start there for Evolve Sim Sports. Anybody you want to thank for today's win?
Yeah, I mean, the whole team, we put in a lot of work. We had a couple guys running yesterday who were kind of the guinea pigs, so thank you for their sacrifices. You know, they kind of paved the way we knew what we needed to do. We got a couple sponsors on board with TNT Promo, Joe's Pokestop, Direct Innovations, Tranco, and then, you know, just you guys at GSRC and the majors. Rebranding the whole series has been a lot of work on the back end, I'm sure, from Mike's side, and I just appreciate everything that all the admins and you guys do to let us race and enjoy these broadcasts and everything. So thank you very much.
That was your winner, Andrew Warren, and everybody else seems a little too tired after that melee to come and talk to us. So we're going to close this out with a big thank you to the majors for bringing us back on for another season of coverage. And don't forget about their charity, the Wounded Warrior Project. Again, we've got a link in the description below if you want to find out more and how you can get involved. Thanks to the team today, Ozzy, Joey, Daniel, and Dougie. Make sure to check out our social media, our website, and our merchandise store. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss a moment. The next race, as we mentioned, Daytona, Sunday, February 5th at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. And be sure to check out our other broadcasts listed here. Until next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.